Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen. I do all kinds of fantastic things in the evenings with microphones because I'm a ring announcer and cage announcer. And I am joined this morning by my two co-hosts who bring MMA punditry to new heights. Introducing to you first, a fresh and caffeinated Mark Priaulx from New York. What's up, buddy?
I am. I literally just finished my coffee right before this show. Good morning, boys. This is a first for us. It only took 101 episodes for us to do a morning episode, but
no, we've done this one other time. I can't remember when it was, but we've done it one other time.
Really? Wow, I have no recollection of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels nice. It's also the 4th of July to all our American listeners. Happy
birthday, America.
You.
America.
Yeah, it would be nice to get out of here and it's not 1 a.m.
That's right. Introducing now, from the Sunshine State of Florida, he is the Nicaraguan Nightmare and an American citizen as well. Don't let the nickname throw you off. Omar Artola.
It's very true. No green card here, baby. Born and raised. Right up in this bitch. Yeah, man. It's a beautiful day outside. It is bright outside. And I'm very looking forward to my barbecues and my hamburgers and all the deliciousness that comes with the 4th of July over here in the great old state of Americas. It's not a state.
Man.
It's not a state.
It's a nation.
It's a country.
The 4th of July, when America said, fuck off, England. How do you guys feel about fireworks? Like them, hate them?
Well, I have real windows now, so they don't bother me as much.
I have two different feelings on fireworks. Like last night, we went to this restaurant that's on the lake, and there were fireworks like out over the lake, and it was like they were like professional fireworks. It was so nice. What I hate when residential neighborhood people shoot off fireworks in the middle of your fucking block or in their driveway or something, and it's like, why would you ever do that? Like, that is the rudest, most disrespectful thing. Like, people have kids, people have babies, people have dogs.
We are.
I hate it.
Complete opposite ends of this spectrum.
So am I.
My neighborhood has, I believe, about 10 different homes that put on like professional level fireworks shows.
Yeah.
And we bring folding chairs out into the middle of the street.
It's great.
And watch
it is
them
not
all
great.
over the place.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love just sitting in my house. I've got no clothes on, and I'm just watching fucking fireworks. It's the best.
And
It's 100% the best.
More proud of America than during COVID when all like the government leaders were like, "Let's not do fireworks this year," and everyone was just like, "Fuck you!" And everywhere was fireworks.
I'd say go to a park and watch like your town's professional fireworks show where they like launch them way up in the air. They're huge. They're amazing. I'm like, people who do sparklers and little fucking rockets on your street, I'm like, hey, you're going to burn my house down. I'm going to sue you. Or you're going to burn your own house down. Or you're going to hurt somebody.
Well,
and even if none of that bad stuff happens, you're just waking up my kids.
Tonight we are going to he's not actually my uncle. He's kind of like my fake uncle. But we're going to his house because he went down to Pennsylvania and bought endless amounts of fireworks that we will all be lighting in the middle of a street.
Do you think, you guys know where I live, right? There's
Florida.
a fucking, there's a goddamn, they're giving away fireworks. It's buy two, get one free fucking down here. There's one on like every corner right now. They're giving that shit away, bro. And I love fireworks. And in New York, I used to have a real problem with them from a personal standpoint just because my windows were like fucked up and like open and like didn't really seal all the way and didn't have really good sound protection. So it was literally like it was in my house, which is very different than hearing like the muffled pop behind real fucking windows. So New York, I had a problem, and they were also like doing it right downstairs, and they were like M80s and shit. It wasn't even like nice fireworks.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's different though. they're shooting off fucking like military explosives. I want some fucking
Everybody
color out
does.
here.
That's what it sounds like. That's what it's supposed to sound like.
No, but I like real fireworks. I actually hate little bitch fireworks. I hate the sparklers. Those things are a waste of time.
So stupid.
I don't like it when it's like June and people are doing it, and I'm like,
oh, sure,
let my kids sleep. But as soon as it's like July 1st, that whole week, go for it. I don't go.
Well, so I don't know, Mike, if you were still in New York City when the firework thing was going on, but that shit, it got to a point in New York City where they were doing it every day for months.
Oh, it was great.
When my wife and I were dating, she lived in Washington Heights, and then when we got married, we lived in Inwood, and it's just like some of those streets in the Heights.
Oh,
dude,
they were wild.
A war zone of fireworks.
Yeah, and it's all so. I lived on Broadway, which is sort of like the main street that separates the psychos on one side and sort of like the closeted psychos on the other side. And so the one side is just wild, bro. Like they were lighting off fireworks all the time. And then on top of that, they were filming in the Heights around the same time. And there's a scene and a whole song that goes with fireworks. And those bitches blew up our fucking block for like a month, every day from like midnight to like 4 a.m. It was out of control. But I love him now.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Well, once again, happy birthday, America. And now let's talk about some other fireworks that happened this past weekend.
Before we keep going,
that was a nice segue.
I keep having this thought of you in like 20 years. Get off my fucking lawn with that firework. Just completely angry. Just so angry with the kids and their fireworks.
It sounds like the American Revolution has broke out again, like on my street.
Oh my god. He's gonna be the grumpy old geezer who's just yelling at kids on his rocking chair when he's in the 70s.
No. All right, boys. This past weekend, there were other fireworks. Mr. Sean Strickland got his first finish since November of 2020, which was fantastic to see him get back in the win column emphatically. Let's talk about the rundown of this show real quick, though. We're going to talk about all the fights from this past weekend's UFC Fight Night. Strickland versus Magomedov. We're going to find out who rose and fell in Mark's rankings system that we call the Priaulx Rankings. We're going to find out what's new in the world of MMA in the headlines with what's going on outside of the cages with our segment Inside the MMA Sphere with Omar Artola. And then we are going to look ahead to this weekend's fantastic, delicious pay-per-view card, UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. And then we might end with a little bit of trivia. Before we get into any fight talk, gentlemen, let us first thank our audience. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, thank you so much. Do us a favor, if you've been liking what you've been watching, give us that thumbs up. That helps us out so much with all the algorithm things. Subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss a video or clip that we publish. Our favorite method of engagement is the comment section down below. If you guys like any of our takes, let us know. If you disagree with any of our takes, we want to hear and read your takes down in the comments below. As always, keep it classy. If you want audio only, we got you there. Find us wherever you get those podcasts. And of course, find us on social media. You can find us on all the socials at @&new_MMA show in all the places. With that being said, gentlemen, this week, the name on the marquee has got to be, once again, Sean Strickland, who this past weekend at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, in a consequential middleweight bout, defeated Ismagulov by TKO in the second round, the official time, 4:20 of round number 2. Once again, Sean Strickland gets his first finish inside the distance since November of 2020 when he finished Brendan Allen in the second round as well. Mark, start us off. Give us your take of this vintage, classic, a very Sean Strickland performance from Sean Strickland.
As I burp into the microphone. That was exactly what Sean Strickland needed at this point in his career. And you can look back now in retrospect and think, they gave him the right kind of opponent to make that happen. But a lot of people were on Magomedov going into that fight.
I was.
And Sean really played that fight absolutely perfectly. I'm sure that a focal point of his game plan was to let Magomedov throw his big power shots in round one, stay safe, make his reads, and then try to take the fight over from round two onward. And I say that simply because we all kind of thought that would be the game plan going in because Abus starts hot. So I got to think his team saw the same thing, and that's what he went out there intending to do. And if that was the game plan, not only did he do a perfect job of that in round one, just staying in his shell and moving and jabbing and letting Magomedov make his big, powerful movements, but holy hell, it wasn't just that Magomedov might slow down a bit as the fight got deeper and deeper. This man hit the stool at the end of round one and was like, well, guys, that was everything I had. Like, shame I couldn't get it done because it's over now. Like, it was it. He came out for round two, and it was immediate backing up, huffing and puffing. You could see him start hopping up and down, trying to, like, find some juice in his legs. And it was over. You could tell really quickly in round two that it was over. And Sean Strickland was a shark that smelled blood, and he made sure he didn't let him off the hook, but he also made sure he didn't rush it. He stayed calm. He walked him down over and over, kept up the 1-2, started to kind of switch up the timing to try to find that clean shot. And he just trusted that the pressure would get to him, and that's exactly what it did. It took a good chunk of shots. It took about 4 minutes or so, but he finally dropped him. Mark Smith let him land about 10 more on the ground for no apparent reason. And Sean Strickland got himself a big win and a big finish in a perfect performance. And not to mention he endured a really bad eye poke in the first round to do it, so props to him for that. But it was really just what he needed to try to creep into a title shot picture here that it didn't feel like he was in and doesn't feel like he should be in off beating Abus Magomedov, but like he kind of is just because of the finish and what could potentially happen coming up. Like he's kind of on the periphery of that title shot picture right now.
Omar, bringing you in here, give us your take on the techniques and the defense that Sean Strickland throws out in the first round and on the finish he got in the second round.
Dude, I wish I could explain that defense to you, but it is honestly some of the sketchiest defense I've ever seen, and I don't think I would ever tell anybody to defend the way that Sean Strickland defends, but it works for him. And like Michael Bisping says, God bless him. But I can't. It's just so weird to me, man. It's like the modified Philly shell shouldn't really work in MMA. He keeps his shoulder, his lead shoulder, very, very in front of him. He keeps his other hand up high, and he's able to kind of shift his way back and forward. And I think the real reason it works for him specifically is because he doesn't generally stop coming forward, and he's able to kind of keep that movement working for him and blocking in that sense. But it's sketchy, man, and there were moments there where, I mean, it could have went right through the guard. It could have breezed right through the guard. It could have went right into his head in certain situations. And I guess as a fan, it makes certain moments fun because you don't really know what's going to happen, I guess. But for me, it just seemed like there were risks involved with that type of defense. But I say that as somebody who would never implement that type of defense in my own game. But know fully well just from seeing Sean Strickland do it that he knows what the fuck he's doing. So I'm definitely not saying Sean Strickland should be doing something else. I'm simply just saying I can't really say anybody else should be doing the same thing. Not even Chris Curtis has that same exact type of style. Like his defense is a lot more relatively traditional. He has the modified Philly shell from time to time, but you'll see him, with his hands up, very traditional. As far as the striking is concerned, we call that a melting. That was absolute craziness. The first round, like Mark said, very measured approach, trying to figure everything out, trying to get his reads. And then the second round came out. Abus had nothing left, and Strickland, the thing I loved about it, though, was that Strickland knew that Abus was on his way out, and he wanted to help him get there. And in those moments, it was one of those things where I've seen, I've seen an anime where there's a boxing anime from long ago, whatever, but there is a point between the protagonist and one of the opponents, basically, where the opponent wanted to tenderize the protagonist. He wasn't ready to take him out yet. He just wanted to keep working him, keep working his body, keep working everything until he felt like his body was tenderized enough to get out of there. And I feel like that's the psycho-ass approach that Sean Strickland takes sometimes, because he was just working Abus left and right, never let him breathe. Abus maybe threw a big pot shot here and there to try to, stay in the fight. But you could just see little by little. And my wife said it too while she was watching. She was like, he looked like he was drowning. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And it was a beautiful performance from Sean Strickland. His finishing ability when he does have those guys in that position, I think, is fantastic. I do love the fact that he doesn't force it, right? And I think a lot of the times when he's winning decisions or when he's won decisions, there are fights that could have easily been finished in certain respects, but he doesn't force it, and he doesn't need to. The volume that he presents is an issue in and of itself. And guys like Abus and guys who throw big power and think that they can get him out of there in one round, and I think the Pereira fight is a big outlier. And I think a lot of people think that they can do what Pereira did to Strickland, and I think you're seeing that they're going to pay the price for it.
Yeah, I was one of those people. I still had the memory of the Pereira fight in my head fresh, thinking about what a big, athletic, powerful guy can do to Sean Strickland, because he does have that low hands stance that doesn't seem like it's that defensively responsible. But then again, like watching him, Sean Strickland has such an interesting style and a kind of somewhat unique style that he brings into the cage, because he has this stalking style where he's constantly walking towards you, like with his hands down around his midsection. But he also is such a defensive fighter. So he's a pressure fighter, and he's this like modified Philly shell guy. And it has gotten him very far. It's like credit where credit's due, man. Yep. He's a middleweight who has come up from 170. So he's not the biggest middleweight. He doesn't have the biggest power for the division, not by a long shot. Like Sean Strickland is not even in the, I don't even know if I would put him in like the top 5 or top 10 of like power hitters at 185 pounds.
Yeah, certainly not.
But the style that he employs is like his secret sauce, man. And he should just keep riding as long as he can. I was disappointed in Magomedov. I took him. I thought Magomedov is going to have great size on him, have more power, more athleticism, more explosiveness. And I envision him doing a similar thing that Pereira did. It turns out that Pereira is also very accurate. I thought Abus seemed a little wild in the first round. And I was like, I hope he doesn't gas himself out. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you sort of just touched on this, but what makes Sean Strickland so effective and able to crumble guys at times is that for guys not named Pereira, it's very hard to fight him, because not only is he stalking you, but it's so hard to hit him clean.
Yeah.
Like other guys who stalk, it's like, all right, I got to stand my ground here. I got to find a counter. I got to hit him with a good one, and he's going to kind of calm down, and he's going to stop walking me down because he's going to feel my power, and the fight's going to reset. But Sean Strickland never stops walking you down, and it's super hard to hit him cleanly. So it's hard to get to that point that makes Sean ever be like, all right, let me reset here so I don't get caught like that again, because he doesn't really get caught like that.
Sorry for my kids up there screaming. Can you guys hear it? It's coming through?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at these middleweight rankings, and let's talk about where Sean Strickland could go from here. Mark, if you were the UFC matchmaker, what would you do with Strickland next?
I think it's really interesting, depending on what happens this weekend. We are going to talk about in a bit this fight between Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis. We've said before on this show how surprised we were that we made this fight, and they did say whoever wins the fight is going to fight Izzy. Simply because, obviously, if Dricus wins it, of course, you go ahead and you book Dricus and Izzy. But if Whittaker wins it, we're like, man, really? We're going to go back to the third fight between them already? It's just not something I expected. And I still don't know if I'm 100% convinced they're going to do that. If Whittaker wins this fight, if they're going to say, yeah, we're going to stick to what we said here, we're doing Izzy and Whittaker. I don't know if I'm 100% convinced. And if they don't do that, I could see Sean Strickland sneak into a title shot off of a win over Abus Magomedov.
Wow.
Just like, obviously, Cannonier's ahead of him, but Cannonier already fought Izzy. You know, Costa's not at a title shot quite yet. Vettori just lost. I think that's it in terms of guys that are ahead of him. So it's like, if they want to get a fresh opponent for Izzy and Dricus does not come through on Saturday, I could see them be like, you know what, fuck it. We're going to go Sean Strickland here. So I'm not ruling that out. If it doesn't happen, and the winner of Whittaker and Dricus, whoever it may be, is certainly going to fight Izzy, then things open up a bit more, they could do Paulo Costa if he won. I wouldn't even hate going right back to Cannonier. I know they just fought, but it was really close. Everyone debated the decision. And if they were like, you know what, this is for the next title shot, Cannonier and Strickland, you're going to go for it again, winner gets the next one, I wouldn't hate it.
Cannonier versus Strickland. Oh, you mean them running back? I thought you meant for a second. Yeah, okay. It would be very interesting to see Sean Strickland finally get to match up with Adesanya with the style that he presents. It'd be more interesting, I think, to think about him reacting to Adesanya's style, because Adesanya is also a very patient and not an aggressive guy, like an Abus. And man, give it to him, because Sean Strickland, let's face it, he's a star, and he has budded into one of the bright spots, one of the bright personalities of the sport in the UFC. You just kind of you watch the guy, not just the way he fights, but also whenever he's on the mic, you're kind of like, what's this asshole gonna say?
Oh yeah. He has the freest of free passes, too. He says shit that if anyone else said it, it'd be everywhere. And
I don't think you.
What Sean Strickland said this time.
I know.
But I don't think you can cancel him because he doesn't fucking do anything. It's not like he's got businesses. He's got no sponsorships. Like he's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
What did he say about like women need to get back in the kitchen?
I ain't touching nothing of what that fucking kid says.
And it's like I laugh because it's kind of like it's just ridiculous.
His delivery isn't great though. Like, I feel like what he was going for there was trying to be like, we need to like emphasize the nuclear family and try to have more time with parents with kids. Like that's what he circled to by the time he was done talking. But the way he started it was, we need to kick women out of the workforce. It's like he doesn't think about it, how shit he says comes across.
And I like, for the most part, I have been somewhat vocal on this show. I have never been exactly a Sean Strickland guy. I'm like, is this guy kind of such an asshole? But then there's always like, whenever he's on the mic, I'm like, there's something about him that's a little bit redeeming to me.
Yeah, he's a lovable idiot.
He's a kind of a lovable idiot, but sometimes he says shit that's like so stupid.
Correct.
But then sometimes he says it with like a little bit of like a smirk, and I'm like, he knows a little bit that he's like kind of a loose cannon. He knows it.
You know what I notice? And it's stupid that we're trying to analyze this dude's personality, because he could be the biggest asshole in the world for all we know. But I noticed that everyone close to him loves him. So seeing that makes me think like he must be a decent dude, despite the crazy running of mouth.
Yeah, see, my thing is he's probably the guy that would be there for you if you needed him, but he would just never stop saying dumb shit. And, like, I can appreciate that, but, like, I don't need that. I personally don't need that. I'm good. I'm all right.
Let's bring it back on track here. Omar, any other thoughts about Sean Strickland where he could go off of this win over Abus Magomedov?
Yeah, man, it's hard to not want to see him against Adesanya just for the sake of parity, right? You want to see something different. You want to see. I love Whittaker, but like they fought last year. Like it hasn't even been that long since they last fought, and as much as it's difficult to deny Whittaker title shots because of how much he wins, it's also not a fight that I think is that interesting compared to somebody else who we've never seen fight Izzy before. Somebody who seemingly keeps winning, or at least runs into, fights that we believe that he won, even though he may not have. So I'm pretty interested in it. I don't think he's going to get that shot right away, though. If he does, I'm here for it. You know what I mean? If it's one of these, like, Robert Whittaker and Dricus get into a fight and Robert wins, but Robert's hand is broken or some shit, and he's out for like 8 months or something. You know what I mean? I could see Strickland slipping in right in there as well.
Injury prone. I don't want to say injury prone, but he picks up some injuries. Whittaker.
No, he's injury prone. He beats the shit out of people, and he breaks himself in the middle of doing it as well.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's definitely a possibility. The other side of the coin, though, is if that doesn't work out, I would love to see him against Vettori. I think that'd be a real interesting fight.
Very interesting fight. Absolutely. Man, middleweight's so good right now.
They're kind of boys now, though.
Oh, are they? Oh,
Sean Strickland will fight his mother. I don't...
100%.
This is true. This is true.
But yeah, Vettori has been actually training at times with Strickland. And
really? I didn't know
has been splitting time between... Not even splitting. he's kind of like sampling training with Strickland and primarily trains with Dewey Cooper. And Strickland actually said some stuff post-Cannonier loss for Vettori about not really liking Dewey Cooper and thinking he's kind of a fraud coach and a guy who gets more love than he should and so on, and saying that he is the reason Vettori lost and that he wishes Vettori would join their team full-time and that he thinks he'd be much better. I mean, of course he's going to say that, but I'm just saying that's what Strickland was putting out there after the Vettori loss. Interesting.
I did not hear that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, really quick, Sean Strickland's opponent from this past weekend, Abus Magomedov. He is now 1-1 in the UFC. Omar, where do you think he could go from here at middleweight? Who could be a nice opponent to match him up with?
I would got to know where Mark's got him placed at this point, because Abus is a very interesting point right now, because he just came in. He's got a pass before, but obviously with the loss to Sean Strickland and the prop all the way up to Sean Strickland to begin with, I'm kind of curious where Mark threw him in.
Yeah, I mean, I can only rank on what we've seen. His pre-UFC resume was solid. It had nothing to 100% hang your hat on it. And his UFC win was Dustin Stoltzfus. So I have him currently as my number 46 middleweight. Is he better than that? Is he maybe more like 30-ish? Very possibly, but like that's who he should probably be fighting, not Sean fucking Strickland.
Yeah, and I didn't know, and that's what I mean. There was just such a disparity between the person he came in to fight and then the person he ended up fighting this past weekend that I'm not really sure where you end up putting him from a ranking. Like, do you throw him in the middle and like split the difference? Do you keep him over, more towards the lower side? So I guess that's the one place that I guess I was having a little issue with. But knowing that and knowing that he's kind of down on the lower side, him versus Phil Hawes might be a very interesting fight.
Okay. Like it. Mark, any other ideas?
I like that. Similar vein, I was trying to think of a kind of a durable veteran type to see if he can pass that type of test, so I was thinking Eric Anders.
Okay.
Fuck. Eric Anders dies, I think, in that fight, to be honest.
He may, but I feel like that's what we need to see from Magomedov.
Yeah.
Like, if he can pass that test, then it's like, all right, this dude is pretty dangerous. Like, let's work him back up.
Your boy is 7-8. That's so rough, man. I wanted better things for Eric Anders. I did.
Dude, 500 in the UFC through 15 fights ain't too bad.
It's not too bad,
if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
All right, let us now move on to the co-main event of UFC Fight Night. In the lightweight division, Grant Dawson got the win over Damir Ismagulov. The scorecards read 30-27, 30-27, and a 30-26, all in favor for Dawson. Omar, start us off. Give us your take on this fantastic performance over a very, very talented and impressive opponent in Ismagulov.
So I feel like when we talked about this this fight last week, and I beautifully picked Grant Dawson, I feel like, to win. I feel like that was a beautiful one on my part. I didn't see this coming, dog. I didn't see this coming. I didn't. I didn't.
You picked him.
No, I picked him to win.
Like this.
I did not pick him to win like this. I assumed Grant Dawson would find an opportunity. I assumed, Grant Dawson would be able maybe to find a choke or a position that would work for him or something like that. Some fuck up somewhere that he could take advantage of. He beat the holy shit out of this kid. I mean, this was a beautiful Grant Dawson performance. Let me hang on here. I had to write some things down here. The back escape that Ismagulov tried to get into and Grant Dawson continuously tried to ride, or continuously did ride, moved with him, continuously never let him off the hook. It was basically like wet paper towel on him for most of that time. I couldn't be happier with the way that Grant Dawson won that fight, and I think the reason why is because he exceeded my expectations in the fact that he didn't just look for an opportunity. He made the opportunities. He forced that fight. He made that fight what he wanted it to be, and I really think we just saw a real level up in Grant Dawson.
Totally. Mark, getting you in here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. You got to feel the same way. This thing started, and Damir immediately stuffed a really good-looking takedown attempt from Grant Dawson. And I was like, yep, here we go. Like, this is going to be a long night for Grant. And then a minute later, he's got a takedown. A minute after that, he's got the back. And we've said it before about Grant Dawson, certainly, but he is an elite level back taker. And his back control is just as high level. Like, when he is on your back, you're not really changing that position. And Ismagulov learned that in this fight for sure. But I just couldn't believe how he kept getting to that spot every round. And for him to do that against a guy who Arman could barely hold down for like a few Mississippis before he sprung back up to his feet is a monster statement from Grant Dawson. Like, if you remember, yes, Arman beat Ismagulov, but a huge portion of that fight was Ismagulov propping up on his arms, and his ass wasn't on the ground, and Arman trying to change position to actually get him on the ground, and Ismagulov would hip out again, and like, he couldn't even get him truly on the mat. And Grant Dawson had his back for fucking almost 15 whole minutes. He dominated him all fight. And in round 2, there was, kind of an extended striking exchange to start that round, and Ismagulov was touching Dawson, and it was like, oh man, like, could this start to swing here? But Dawson adjusted right away. He dragged it back down, and he got right back to the back. And the third round back take might have been the nastiest one of all of them. I mean, he lifted him. The second they hit the mat, the hooks were already in. It was, the dude has drilled back takes about 1 billion times in his life, and you could tell it. He's good. I've been a fan of him. I think I've picked him every fight up until this one. But, man, same boat as Omar. I did not see him being able to do the things he did against Ismagulov in this fight. That was a huge breakthrough performance for Grant Dawson.
That's awesome for him, man. I'm happy for him. I did not pick him. I went with Ismagulov. I just think his resume and his skill set is just so impressive. But Grant Dawson, man, he just made the fight his fight the whole time. Very impressive stuff. Omar, looking at the light... Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, did you give him a 10-8 round in the first round?
No, but I wasn't really... I was watching it live. I haven't, rewatched it to score it. But live, I don't remember thinking it was a 10-8. Did you?
One judge gave it a 10-8. I didn't.
Yeah.
And I was just looking on MMA decisions, and they did have a good amount of people saying that it was a 10-8. 71.4% people said it was a 10-8 round. So maybe I do need to go back and watch it again. I didn't see it as so much of a... I saw it more of as like a positional mauling, right? Like definitely threw damage and had damage in there for sure. But I don't know. Maybe 10-8... I guess if we're giving 10-7s to people who were almost dead, I guess 10-8 probably wasn't too far from the truth.
Yeah, could be. I haven't rewatched.
Yeah.
Very well could be.
Sorry, Mike.
No, it's all good.
I cut homeboy off here. So where does he go from here? Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson. So didn't this boy ask for a title shot off of that win?
No.
He didn't? I wouldn't even been mad at him for it. He wouldn't have gotten it, but I wouldn't have been mad at him for it.
He said he either wants to fight above him in the rankings or a huge name if it's not. So he said, if they gave him a Tony Ferguson, he would say yes just because of how huge the name is. That
makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, what's Dan Hooker doing right now? Dan Hooker might be a good one to throw him in there with.
We're about to preview Dan Hooker in 30 minutes here.
Well, then the winner then.
Jalen Turner.
The winner of Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner. There it is.
There you go. That works.
Mark, any other ideas?
Yeah, I mean, he's there now. I actually haven't looked. Are the UFC rankings out this morning? I'm curious how high they put him. Because I put him at 8, and I'm wondering. Yes.
10.
These are updated.
10.
10. Okay, but they still have Dos Anjos in lightweight, which is retarded because he moved up to welterweight multiple fights ago. So really, they have Dawson at 9. Who do they have ahead that I don't? Oh, I have him one ahead of Gamrot. They have Gamrot ahead of him. Fair enough. Yeah, you could go a lot of ways. There's this possibility that Arman could end up fighting Chandler if Chandler's not going to get Conor McGregor. Mm-hmm. But if not, Dawson and Arman could be a really good fight. I could see Dawson and Gamrot. You could even go Fiziev. I mean, any of these guys are fine. Point is just this is where we are now for Grant Dawson. He's absolutely got to be fighting someone in the top 10.
Okay. What about Ismagulov? What about him, guys? Mark, let's stay with you and give me a name for Ismagulov at lightweight.
I actually hadn't thought about him now that I realize it, but I have an idea. I just want to see if he is booked. Otherwise, I would like it. He's not. I will say Diego Ferreira, who just returned and got a great win over Michael Johnson. He's a guy who was ranked before his kind of break that he took. And I feel like kind of right in a similar spot as where Ismagulov is coming off that loss. Let's throw them both in there. Might get some crazy scrambles in that one.
Nice. Omar, any other ideas?
I would actually like to see him against the Steamroller, against Mr. Matt Frivola. I think that would be an interesting fight.
Wow,
Yeah.
great fight. Huge fight for Frivola.
Especially with Frivola having shown this new striking comfort, I think it makes it even more interesting.
Yep, I like that one.
Okay, nice. All right, let's move on. Let's see. In the welterweight division, Michael Morales gets a big win over Max Payne Griffin by unanimous decision. All three scorecards the exact same way, 29-28, all in favor for Morales. Mark, start us off. Give us your take of Morales getting the biggest win of his career thus far. Keeps rolling.
This played out kind of how I imagined it would, honestly. I knew Max Griffin is a smart fighter, a tricky fighter. He showed Morales some different things in round one. You could tell they kind of had a game plan to maybe try to throw Morales off a little bit. And round one went pretty well for Max Griffin. But the talent of Morales just overwhelmed as the fight went on. There's too much natural talent in this dude. And it started right away in round two. He started to take the fight over, and I love watching him fight, man. He's just endlessly comfortable striking, and he is so long and flowy in there. But at the same time, everything he throws somehow has heat on it. Like, even when he doesn't wind up and it looks like he's kind of just popping little shots, they snap dudes back. There's a lot of natural, wiry power in that man. Yeah. And he's fast as hell, too, so he's a tough puzzle to solve, especially if you can't take him down, and Max Griffin couldn't. He tried a bunch of times. So, yeah, Morales really shined in those latter two rounds and got a great win for himself over an established vet in Griffin. Continues to march up the ranks. His O is still intact, and I'm definitely interested to see where they choose to go with him next.
And still undefeated, Omar, what is your take on Morales getting this win over this welterweight vet?
Yeah, man, I thought Morales was great. One of my takeaways, though, is I'm still torn on Max Griffin, man. Like, his striking is still a little suspect to me, and I think we've been here for long enough where it should be tightened up a little bit more. His 1-2s down the pocket almost come out at the same time, and he's almost got two hands out at the same time while he's striking. It's not great. It leaves him really off balance, off position. You can see that he's less comfortable in the fire to the point where he's trying to duck and strike at the same time. And it really doesn't make for clean striking against somebody like Morales, whose eyes literally never take their eyes off of their opponent, never are taken off of their opponent. Morales is a lot cleaner because he's a lot more comfortable in there. Max Griffin, I think, got to a point where he was trying to look for the takedowns because he wasn't so comfortable in there with him.
Totally.
And I think you can really see it. I hope Max Griffin does something about the striking, because I think the things that he's lacking in there are things that he could train himself to get better at and work on. I just hope that he's able to identify them and fix them, because at this rate with those specific issues, he's not gonna. There's gonna be a ceiling, and that ceiling I don't think goes above 15.
Okay. Let's talk about that. What's next for Michael Morales, Mark? How close is he to knocking on the door of the top 15?
So I don't have him terribly close just yet. Let me tell you where I actually do have him. I have him at 36. His record so far is Trevin Giles, Max Griffin, and Adam Fugit. So solid, but hasn't quite broken through against some higher level guys. But I would like to take a bit of a jump here at this point with the way he has looked. I'm going to say, let's do him and Chaos Williams. See if he can, get past someone who carries a lot more danger than the dudes he's been fighting. He hasn't exactly been fighting finishing threats, so let's get him in there with a guy like that.
Wow. Omar, any other ideas?
Yeah, I was actually going to go just probably right in that same vein, and I was going with the Joaquin Buckley. I thought that would be a very interesting and explosive fight. Striking on par for sure.
For sure. Wow.
It definitely is.
Tremendous stuff. You guys have anything to say about where Max Griffin could go from here? Or do you want to move on?
I'll match him up real quick. I don't want to drop him down too low, right? But I haven't seen Nico Price fight in a minute. I don't know what Nico Price is doing other than, he's
fighting on Saturday.
This weekend?
Do you know any of the fights that we're previewing?
We'll get there.
He's fighting Robbie Lawler.
What about Phil Rowe? Phil Rowe? I know he just finished fighting, but
actually just gonna say.
Yeah. Okay.
Rowe. There you go. We've recovered, Mike. Phil
yes.
Okay.
Oh, take a look at Saturday's card, why don't you?
Yeah, let's take a look at what we got going on here this weekend.
All right. Let's see. Let's move on here. In the women's flyweight division from this past weekend's fight night card, Ariane Lipski defeated Melissa Gatto by split decision. Scorecards read 30-27 and 29-28, both in favor for Lipski. Gatto earning her own 29-28 on one of the judges' scorecards. Omar, start us off. Give us your take. Who did you have winning this fight on your scorecard?
I feel like when I watched this fight, I had Lipski winning this fight. I thought she had a little bit more volume. I thought she had a little bit more of the forward pressure. It was a close fight. I don't think this was a robbery by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think either girl did anything overly significant to be like, I won this fucking fight. But it was a scrap. It was back and forth. I had Lipski winning the first round and the third round, if I remember. Oh, no, the second round and the third round, excuse me. And I had Gatto winning the first round. I think that's how a lot of people had it. Let me just check MMA decisions real quick. Looks like people had Lipski winning 29-28, 36.8% of folks, plus the 14 for a 30-27 win as well. So it does look like most people had Lipski winning, but by a slight majority. Like I said, it was a close fight.
Mark?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I don't understand anything that's happening here. I feel like the scoring of this fight was in the twilight zone for me. But obviously there's a lot of people who do feel like Lipski won. 2 judges thought she won. 6 out of 10 experts on MMA decisions last I looked had it for Lipski. 50% of the public had it for Lipski, so it was split right down the middle. I don't understand which of the first 2 rounds of this fight she won. Like, walking forward while connecting on nothing does not win you a round. I get it that she was walking forward, but Melissa Gatto, I thought, did a fantastic job of being all the way in or all the way out, which is exactly how I thought she needed to fight this fight. Round 1 was all the way out. She picked Lipski apart at range. Lipski landed next to nothing. And then round 2, Gatto was all the way in. I admit that round was a bit closer, but Gatto was working in the clinch. She was landing knees in small shots. And again, I didn't feel like Lipski did anything. And I picked Lipski. I wanted to be like, okay, she's pulling it out here. I didn't. Through 10 minutes, I just didn't see her really do anything. So I don't get which of those rounds goes to Lipski personally. But she did win round 3. But I don't like the decision here.
Okay. Moving right along, let's just talk about Ariane Lipski now. Mark, match her up next at women's flyweight.
She should fight Melissa Gatto.
I mean, I meant to. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely unprepared coming into this. I did not do my normal matchups ahead of time, so my fault on that. Let's see. I will say that. Oh, you know what I'll say? Could be a bounce back spot for a Miranda Maverick who looked somewhat bad in her last fight, and a chance for Lipski to kind of launch upward if she's able to beat Miranda Maverick. So I will go there.
Okay. Omar, any other ideas before we go on to Saint-Denis?
No, that was quite literally the same pick that I had.
Cool. All right. It sounds like World War III is going on up in my living room right now. A couple of toddlers here. Okay, in the lightweight division, once again, Benoit Saint-Denis stops the hype train of Ismael Bonfim by finishing him in the first round by submission via rear naked choke. The official time 4:48 of round number 1. Mark, start us off. Give us your take of Saint-Denis getting this huge win over this very, very hot prospect, Bonfim.
Yeah, Ismael Bonfim coming out and doing 0 to adjust to about 7 or 8 consecutive huge left body kicks that turned his ribs purple was not on my bingo card for how he would approach that fight.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, I love it. Do more of it.
Yeah, so I just feel like that's not the ideal way to start a fight, letting yourself get kind of tenderized and broken down like that, almost willingly, it seemed. So that threw me off. He did bounce back. He fought up from a takedown. He did some damage on the feet, certainly as the round went on. But Benoit Saint-Denis is a fantastic grappler, man, and we are learning that. The way that he uses his weight and little leverage moments to change the situation on the mat, he's really good. And once he got Bonfim down again, he worked his way to the back. He worked his way to a choke, all methodically, all step by step. And you know, as I said, I'm a fan of his game. We have seen these signs of his grappling, and if he had been in a different matchup in this step up, I might have rolled with him. I just thought Bonfim was that good. But he showed out, man. And it wasn't even really a choke. It was like a good old
crank
jaw crusher almost.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like you saw Bonfim kind of like stretching the jaw out when he finally let go. But the grip was so strong that, you know, as soon as he really squeezed it, it was like immediate. Bonfim was like, nope, can't fight this. So, yeah, a huge and unexpected win, I think, for Benoit Saint-Denis. And he's got to start getting some respect.
Absolutely. Omar, what did you think of those body kicks?
Yeah, it's not even the body kicks. It's like Mark said. It was the you just didn't do anything. You just took them, and it was weird, right? And it led me to believe that there was something wrong, that there was something that was off with Bonfim, that he wasn't on, that there was, you know, one of those things you go in with and you're not 100% in the fight. And it kind of carried through the fight for me, and I, you know, it didn't look like the performance that I was expecting from Bonfim. And to that point, it was exactly the performance that Saint-Denis needed. He was able to tear through this guy with such hype that it's hard not to deny him the respect that he's just garnered and a good opponent going forward.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. That being said, let's keep this thing rolling. Give me your opponent next at lightweight for Benoit Saint-Denis.
Saint-Denis. I just had the lightweight rankings up, and now they disappeared. Mark, take it first.
Yeah. So he kind of shot his shot. I know he's got this Paris card coming up in September. Forget the second name that he said. It might have been Armin, honestly. But then he kind of circled back to Gamrot. He said that Gamrot being from Poland, maybe he'd want to be on a European card, and he would love to do that as like a co-main event on the Paris card. So that's definitely a jump. I understand he looked great here, and he's certainly working his way up the ranks. It wouldn't shock me if they do that, simply because it is a Paris card. There's not a ton of French fighters. They love him over there, if you remember his reaction that he got in Paris last time. So it really wouldn't shock me to see a jump like that. I'll give another option in case they don't go quite that high. I think him and Thiago Moises would be a really fun fight to see those two match each other on the mat.
That would be cool.
Who was your first pick?
His Ask of Gamrot I was talking about.
Oh, fuck. Oh,
that's what he asked for.
Yeah, no, he's wilding. He's bugging. The name that I was thinking about, just to kind of stay within the kind of area that he's in right now, was a good win for sure. But even a Rafa Garcia, I thought would be an interesting fight. Just kind of, I don't know if we need to throw him in the fucking number 8. That seems like a lot.
Yeah. Again, I don't think he gets a ranked fighter unless it's that they really want to put him in a huge. Again, as he said, he played it perfect. He was like, look, it's a French card. Put me in the co-main, and if he's going to be in the co-main, it's going to be against a name. It ain't going to be against, a Rafa Garcia. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could get something like that, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's true.
And he's 3-0 at lightweight, just to remind. His only loss was in his debut when he took it up a weight class.
Saint-Denis improves overall to 11-1 with 1 no contest. He is now 3-1 in the UFC.
Dude, honestly,
War.
even fighting Kutateladze coming off of the loss recently would be an interesting fight.
That'd be a good fight. That works for sure.
Even Ismagulov coming off of this loss would be an interesting fight.
Sure would. Let's get it going.
I think he's more there. Kutateladze, Ismagulov, Moises, as I said. I think he's past Rafa Garcia, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Sure. God of War in French, Google just told me is Le Dieu de la Guerre. I don't know.
That can't be it.
French. Le Dieu de la Guerre, something like that.
Thank God you're here.
French is so hard. Okay. One more fight to recap, and then we'll jump into the lightning round to finish out this fight night. In the middleweight division, Nursultan Ruziboev in his UFC debut.
Wrong one.
Wrong one.
Rinat.
Oh, we're not doing that. Oh, we're doing Rinat.
Rinat.
Okay. The featured bout on the prelims in the welterweight division. Rinat Fakhretdinov finishes Kevin Lee in the first round under a minute by submission via guillotine choke. The official time, 55 seconds of the very first round. Omar, start us out. Give us your take on Fakhretdinov destruction of Kevin Lee.
First of all, you can't be Kevin Lee talking all this shit and then get wiped like that. That's madness. And this is kind of what I was talking about with me not having any real confidence in Kevin Lee. The recent performances and the recent resume of sorts is not really something that I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, I totally see him winning this fight. In fact, it was exactly the way I didn't think it would go exactly the way it went down, but I did think he would kind of get his ass beat a little bit. And it didn't really take Rinat a long time to do it. It didn't take Rinat a lot of effort to do it. He threw a 1-2 down the pipe, cracked Kevin Lee right in his face, dropped Kevin Lee, got on the guillotine, and just did work. Literally probably the worst night for Kevin Lee. I can't imagine that have been any worse than that. Maybe getting knocked out, but that, he kind of a little bit, got the flash knocked down at least. I feel bad for him to a certain extent, but again, he's got a little bit too much bravado and not enough humility for the certain circumstance that he was in. And I'm a guy who enjoys confidence, and I like seeing guys be confident, but he was talking a little too much. And for him to get laid out like this, I mean, the internet is a savage. They were going around putting up fake Kevin Lee released from the UFC posts everywhere. I mean, dude, there was one that had there's the UFC roster watch, who's telling us consistently, who's getting on the roster, who's leaving the roster. People were making fake posts of that format showing Kevin Lee having been removed. It's wild.
That's mean.
Wild. It is a little mean.
I saw an actual article about will he get another shot in the UFC, and I'm like, fuck, I hope. He just re-signed. It's one fight, and you gave him fucking a monster. I sure hope there's another fight at least on the horizon here.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
But with all that said, Kevin Lee did not look good. He did not on the feet, not on the mat, not really anywhere. I hope he can show more in his next fight, but he got really overwhelmed here. But let's talk about Rinat. This dude doesn't seem to be getting talked about the way that he should. We're through 3 fights now, and I don't know if he's lost 1 minute of a fight. I believe his first one was 30-26. Brian Battle was I think at least 30-26. I feel like he killed Brian Battle.
Yeah, that was
and then this one. It's kind of Chimaev-esque at this point without the buzz. So I don't know why that is. And I do think Kevin Lee, regardless of kind of where he is at this point in his career, I do think he is still a bit of a springboard forward. So I kind of think we might see a bigger deal matchup for Rinat in his next one, but he should be, approaching the mix now. I'd like to see him against someone pretty high level, because it's been 3 fights with sheer dominance.
Fakhretdinov, he is from Moscow, Russia. He lost only his second professional fight. So then his record was 1-1, which means that he has now rattled off his 20th consecutive win as a professional mixed martial artist. He is undefeated in the UFC thus far, like you said, 3-0. Just tremendous stuff, man. He's a very, very tough welterweight, and he's going to be a handful for many more opponents to come. Omar, who do you think should be the next one for Fakhretdinov?
Man, I was actually thinking about Kevin Lee. Poor Kevin Lee. Trying to save this man's life somewhere. I mean, with a performance like that, I mean, you want to keep selling him, right? He's a big name, like Mark said. It's kind of Chimaev-esque, and you kind of got to keep rolling while the iron's hot. And it's not one of those performances like a Paddy performance, for example, where you feel like you kind of need to completely slow roll him and kind of test the waters little by little. With that being said, man, if we're gonna go up somewhere, I mean, I know Robbie Lawler is fighting this weekend. Maybe we do the loser of Lawler and Priest.
Oh, that's nice.
Jesus
I
Christ.
like that.
Nico Price, not Priest.
Priest.
I don't know what happened there, man.
That's okay. Mark, any other ideas for Fakhretdinov? And then we'll talk about Kevin Lee.
I think this man should be close to fighting ranked fighters at this point. I'm gonna say Gunnar Nelson, who is a dude who is probably just outside the rankings.
Wow.
As kind of like a final pre-rankings test for Rinat.
Fakhretdinov was such a tough test for Kevin Lee to come back to the UFC after getting cut. I mean, just to quickly recap Kevin Lee's recent history. He became a lightweight contender, and then Tony Ferguson took his lunch money and also took his mojo, finished him with the triangle choke. Then he gets a TKO doctor stoppage over Barboza. Then he gets completely outboxed by Al Iaquinta. He gets triangled by RDA. Then he has that gorgeous head kick victory over Gregor Gillespie, and everyone is like, he's back. He is a star. Then he gets guillotined by Oliveira. He gets UD'd by D-Rod. So just like a lot of red on his record, man. A lot of red. Gets cut by the UFC. Then he decisions Diego Sanchez in Khabib's promotion over in Russia, in Eagle FC. And then he re-signs with the UFC, and they match him up with Fakhretdinov. The guy's undefeated in 20 fights. Has so much more size over him. I do not like Kevin Lee fighting at welterweight. I will say. I think I've said that before. I'll say it again. He's listed at 5'9" on SureDog. He's a much better lightweight in my opinion. I know that might be a tougher cut for him, but I just don't see him going anywhere. I don't see him getting any traction at 170 pounds. He's just going to keep getting matched up with these guys who are just much bigger than him and much more powerful than him, like Fakhretdinov. So
he's the definition of a 65er. If you remember back when there was that buzz about making a 165 and a 175, it would be so much better for him because, welterweight is just, it's not it. I mean, if he's fighting, a true striker at welterweight, it could still go his way because his wrestling is that good. But dudes who can wrestle at 170 are just big enough to not let Kevin Lee impose his will. And he needs that back at 55, but unfortunately it's a really tough cut for him.
My take is a little bit different. I actually think that his wrestling is not that good. And I think that that's the reason why he can excel at 170, because somebody who actually had real, solid wrestling technique could kind of work around the size disadvantage by utilizing their wrestling properly. But that man doesn't like to wrestle the way that a lot of the technical wrestlers do. He lays on people. He tries to put people against the cage, and it doesn't work. He's not a great wrestler. He's able to do it at 155 because he's that much stronger than guys at 155. But it's not because his wrestling or his technique is any good. It's because he's stronger than them. And 170, he doesn't have that advantage.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. He's more of a strength and length wrestler.
Yeah.
Than a technique wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, any ideas of who Kevin Lee could be matched up with next at 170 pounds?
So I want to see the loser of Trevin Giles and Bonfim, Gabriel Bonfim, fight Kevin Lee. That fight's going down on the I believe the McGregor-Poirier card. Or I'm sorry, not the McGregor-Poirier card. There's no fucking McGregor-Poirier card. My bad.
Are you having a stroke?
Gaethje Poirier.
I'll say Tim Means.
I like that. All right, gentlemen, let us now throw the remainder of these fights from this past weekend's fight night into our lightning round. starting us off with what was the opening bout on the main card of this fight night. In the middleweight division, debuting Nursultan Ruziboev, I believe from Uzbekistan, defeated Bruno Ferreira by knockout in the very first round. Omar, start us off.
That was a wild little sequence of events. I mean, there's not really much to it. Not a lot happened in this fight. Ferreira ends up throwing a naked leg kick, no setup behind it. And he had already thrown a few leg kicks, I think, at that point already. So he had kind of already left that read out there. And Ruziboev caught it, threw his right hand behind it, and dropped Ferreira like a bag of shit and just followed up. And that was all she wrote.
Mark.
Yeah, sometimes length is everything, and it was here. You know, for Hera threw a distance weapon in the leg kick, but he's so much smaller that he had to get in fairly close to do it. And you know, in other matchups, he wouldn't be in as much danger throwing that leg kick. But here he was, and Ruziboev caught it and delivered a big, long, straight right that landed flush, and that was all she wrote. So, yeah, really nice debut victory for him who, as he said in the post-fight, long road for him to get here. Dude has a lot of fights, so to get a UFC debut victory has got to be pretty awesome for him.
You could see the emotion on his face. The emotion on his face was great to watch.
Yeah, man. Also getting a first-round finish in the featherweight division, Joanderson Brito knocks out the late replacement debuting Weston Wilson. Omar, start us off.
Few takeaways from this fight. Weston Wilson needs to stop shitting on himself. He wasn't great, but, like, you shouldn't sell yourself as the Walmart Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Like, you just shouldn't, especially if you're going to have a performance like that. That's not great.
I didn't hear that.
Oh, he said that in an interview. And it was funny, and then he had that performance, and I was like, that's a little too spot on. Probably shouldn't do that. Joanderson Brito we should never interview that man after the fights are over. That dude's a wild man. But the performance itself, I thought was beautiful, man. Brito is a beast, and he came forward with, you know, Wilson tried to use his length and his kind of Walmart karate style to try to keep Brito away from. Listen, I'm just repeating what was said. Repeating what was said. He said it about himself. But Brito was able to walk through it, man. He didn't really have any trouble with it. He had his early reads and his moments to try to figure it out. But I think Weston might have given him a little bit too much credit and a little bit too much respect early on. And I think it cost him, man. I think had he let the hands go a little bit more and was able to be a little bit more aggressive with his long-range striking, because I think he had a lot of the distance there that he could have worked with that he just didn't. But it was a good performance from Brito and another one on the books for him.
My takeaway is that dudes need to stop going for knee bars at this point, or like go for them for 5 seconds. You know, 5 seconds. See if you can tighten it up. If you can't, bail, because it feels like every week now we see someone try to go knee bar and then just get their face pounded through the mat. Like, guys are getting too good now.
Right. There's no defense.
People are used to being in knee bars at this point. Like, the training, they're too good now at understanding how to move, how to twist to open up that ground and pound. And we're seeing it every single week, and Brito did exactly that. So I think guys have to be a little less comfortable in that knee bar spot.
People need to be a little bit less comfortable just being on the ground as well. Like, you're not winning on the ground like that. Just because you're wrapped up like a fucking anaconda around his leg doesn't mean you're winning the fight. Like, you're not really doing much. And so you're just taking damage at this point. And I don't know, man. The approach to the fight was a little weird, and I expected him to even be better on the feet, but he wasn't even that much better there.
Dude, and there was a brief moment where I was like, oh, shit, is he going to get this? Because it looked like he was kind of hyperextending Brito's knee.
Yeah.
But to your point, you're absolutely right. It's like, this is not straight jiu-jitsu, guys. And you're going to get – because it's just a logic of, like, you have to go 2-on-1 of, like, both hands on the leg. And if the guy has an understanding of, like, of where he's safe and how if you're not going to get it – then, like, that's exactly what happened. And whoever the ref was it who was the ref? Was it Herb?
I don't remember,
think
to be honest. I'm blanking.
Can't remember.
Whoever the ref was yelled at Brito a couple times to not grab the cage, to not sink his fingers into the cage. And at one point, he smacked his arm. I was like, damn, Brito's got to fight the ref as well.
It wasn't Herb, I don't think.
It was maybe Tyone.
Yeah, I think it was Tyone.
And then Brito was like, "All right, I won't grab the cage. I'll just turn around. I'll just turn around and rock him in the face and get the finish."
But it's another one of these things that is like the progression of MMA. Like a knee bar is a scary thing to be in.
Yeah.
And in the past, when we saw dudes in knee bar position, they would either be like frozen, trying not to move and accidentally open it up, or they would be only thinking about escaping. But it's another one of these things where as time goes on, the more times guys are in knee bar positions in training, the more they get used to it, the more calm they are, the more they learn how to adjust and not panic in that position. And you're seeing it, and we've seen it with a million other spots in MMA and how things progress. And you're seeing it now. It's that dudes are not as fearful of being in a knee bar position. They feel like they're okay and that they can do damage from that position. And now the knee barrers need to adjust themselves.
Yep. Okay, moving on. In the women's featherweight division, Karol Rosa defeated Yana Santos by split decision. Mark, give us your take.
I'll tell you what, this was yet another decision loss that I didn't love. Yana Santos came out really strong in round 1. She was ready to scrap. She was more aggressive, had the bigger shots. She was strong in the clinch, as we know she can be. She always impresses me how strong she is in the clinch. It seems as if she's stronger than she physically should be. Rosa did take over in round 3. She finally settled in. She got Yana's timing in that round, and she was able to have a much easier time controlling the range and the striking, which is where I thought she would have the advantage. So those rounds were certainly 1-1, and it all came down to round 2, and I don't see how you give that round to Rosa. I really don't. She didn't land that much. It wasn't round 1 level for Santos, but she still did quite a bit over those 5 minutes, and I think it should have been 29-28 for Santos.
Omar?
Yeah, this one I actually agree with. I had Santos winning the first 2 rounds, and then I had Rosa winning the last round. Looking at MMA decisions, it actually looks like a majority of the professional media has them 29-28 for Rosa. They have 2 guys here, 28-29 for Santos, 29-28 for Santos. I don't know why they wrote it like that. But as far as the people are concerned, the 29 folks that have already submitted their scorecards, they have Santos winning that fight by a slight majority. So it wasn't like a blowout or anything. Like Mark said, it really came down to 1 round difference. So it was a close round. I do think that Santos won that fight. I'm just, again, not really ready to die on that hill. If you told me and you gave me a reason why you thought Rosa won that fight, I get it.
Okay, 2 lightweight prospects faced off, and Elvis Brenner out of Brazil, now 2-0 in the UFC, gets it done by, TKO over Guram, the Georgian Viking Kutateladze, who's now 1-2 in the UFC. Mark, go first.
Yeah, 1-2 in the UFC with a win over Gamrot. That's a unique record.
Yes.
I think we can go ahead and acknowledge the fact that Elvis Brenner was wildly underhyped entering the UFC. And I get it. You look at his record, he's got some random losses on there, but the dude is good. Like, he has now beaten Zubaira Tukhugov, who's a quality fighter, in his debut, and he just finished Guram Kutateladze. And it's not like that finish was a lucky sequence or the only good moment he had in that fight. Like, yes, he was probably down 2 rounds, and yes, he was drenched in blood, but he had plenty of good moments in that fight. There was a lot of times where I was like, shit, Elvis Brenner, okay, like, I see you. And Guram, as I just mentioned, like, the dude has had 2 UFC fights prior to this, 1 win and 1 loss, but really it was kind of more like 2 draws. He had 2 razor-close fights with Mateusz Gamrot and Damir Ismagulov, which is pretty damn good. So, and that was no draw. Like, to finish Guram right there was a big deal for Elvis Brenner, and he thrusts himself into the mix, I think, in a way that no one expected to see.
Yeah, man.
With a neck shot KO.
Omar, did you go for Brenner?
I did not, but I would love to.
Do it.
Brenner's a beast, man. I definitely was on the underhype train for this. I definitely didn't see this one coming. As good as Kutateladze is, and he showed that he was in those first 2 rounds, and honestly, even through the 3rd round, it was a great goddamn fight. And for Elvis Brenner to continuously push through what I would have to imagine is a mental, hurdle in getting all those cuts, getting hit that way, getting rocked that way throughout the beginning of that fight, and just continuing to push through, continuing to fight, continuing to keep your hands up. That shit is taxing. And when we got to that 3rd round, man, and they were both in that fight, swinging away and cracking each other, and for Elves to be able to just, it was literally, on the neck. It was... I thought it was like neck chin or neck jaw line or something like that. I literally think he just shut all the blood supply to his brain for that moment, and it just turned everything off in Kutateladze's body slowly. It was a wild moment. I had to replay that finish a few times to really see what had happened. Yeah. But it was a beautiful finish, a gorgeous fight. I don't know if they got fight of the night, but if they didn't, they should. And if they're not going to, they still need to get paid like they did, because that was a fucking fight. That's exactly what you want to watch when you watch MMA. It was great.
Yep, agreed. That was awesome.
Okay, in the women's flyweight division, Luana Carolina upsets the UFC debut for Ivana Petrovic, getting the UD over the Norwegian, Croatian something. Marco first.
Luana Carolina grabs another W, man. She looked really comfortable in there, and Petrovic brought it to her, but Carolina, outstruck her for the majority of the fight. She had some success in the wrestling that she mixed in, and she just did enough to kind of not let Petrovic ever really get off. So a good W for Carolina.
Omar, Carolina evens her record in the UFC now 3-3 under the UFC banner. Give us your take of her win over the debuting Petrovic.
Yeah, I thought Petrovic definitely put up a fight, but I had Carolina winning 1, 2, and 3. I had her winning every single round.
Yeah, I did too.
And the scorecards were all over the fucking place. I don't know if you actually knew round by round what the scorecards were, but they were kind of, well, I guess the two of them were the same, but the Tony Weeks one was a little weird, where they gave Petrovic the second round, and then they gave Carolina the third round, and the other two judges gave Petrovic the third round, but not the second round.
Wow,
very, very odd. Yeah, it was very weird. But again, I had Carolina winning all 3 rounds. I thought her striking actually looked pretty good. She's had a little bit of a rough go in the UFC so far, so I thought it was good for her to come out and actually put on a performance that made her look really good.
Okay, last one here. In the heavyweight division, Alexander Romanov gets the win over Blagoy Ivanov. About 500-plus pounds of man in there opening this fight night card. Omar, start us off. Give us your take of Romanov getting back in the win column.
It was a good win from Romanov. I'm curious to hear Mark's take on it, but I wasn't super impressed, if we're being honest. Romanov, I think, did just enough to win against Blagoy. He was definitely throwing some hands. He definitely had heat on his hands. There was just, I don't know. There was something that was left wanting. Something that I feel like either one of them probably could have pushed something a little bit further, just to make that fight a little bit extra. But Romanov was content in kind of cruising through that fight and just kind of playing it safe, throwing the hands when he had to. But technique-wise, man, those guys are kind of all over the place. They're a little sloppy. They don't really have a lot of great balance underneath them. Not my favorite fight. These gigantic man-beast heavyweight fights are rarely my cup of tea, personally, unless we start getting to the tippy top of the division. But it was a good win for Romanov. I'm not going to take anything away from him.
Mark, send us home.
Yeah, I fully get that take. I do think he looked pretty good, all things considered, in comparison to what we have seen
the last one,
very recently.
Sure.
Held up, which was a nice surprise.
Yeah,
it wasn't quite as aggressively dominant as the early run-up was for Alexander Romanov, but he did show off the hands a little bit. He got his takedowns when he was on top. He still looked like a frightening dude. Obviously, there's some weight loss that needs to happen. He acknowledged that. I don't know if you guys heard him. He said that he didn't want to share it, but he said some really bad things happened in his life, which is what prompted this getting out of shape and stuff. And he said he wasn't going to share what it was, and that he understood the weight he was at and whatever. So we'll see if the weight starts to come off now that he seems to kind of have things back in order. But he was certainly better cardio-wise, at least. And he gets a much-needed win over, an established guy in Ivanov, and I think it kind of levels the ship for Romanov, where it's like, you know what, maybe he still is going to get it together and be a future contender here. So he did what he needed to do.
The Moldovan started his professional career off 16-0, went 5-0 in the UFC, and then suffered back-to-back losses at the hands of Marcin Tybura, losing by majority decision to him, and then coming out and looking just like a different guy against Volkov, like you alluded to with that weight gain.
Yeah. The Tybura one should have been a draw. He won 10-8 in that first round. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's still technically, really, one dude has beat him in a fight to this point
so far.
I did notice. I didn't want to like fat shame the dude, but like I did notice that he seemed bigger, and I didn't really have a very good recollection of what his physique was earlier on. But like I kind of remember him having more of a like built. You know what I mean? Like a little bit more muscle on him, or at least a little bit more visible muscle on him. He was never like shredded. He wasn't like a Sergey Pavlovich, but you know, I do remember there being, you know, less cake and a little bit more shield. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sucks to hear that, you know, the weight gain had something to do with something bad that was going on with him, something personal. So he was probably just eating his feelings a little bit. And
just not doing it.
Understandable sometimes.
If you've ever been, you know, in that kind of mental situation, it's difficult to, it's the eating is one thing, but it's also not doing anything. You know what I mean? You don't really have that thing that gets you to the gym, that makes you want to work out, that makes you want to feel something like that for an hour or plus. You know what I mean? So I hope he gets his shit together, man. Because if he is as good as he was, you know, from a prospect standpoint, he's still very interesting. The last couple of performances just haven't been it for me.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put a bow on this.
A lighter Romanov the next time he shows up.
Yeah, man. We'll see. Let's put a bow on this fight night card and move on with this little show here. Mark, let us know who rose and who fell in your rankings system that we love to call the Priaulx Rankings.
We might have the most big movement we have ever had this week. So there are 5 risers and 2 fallers. I'll start with the fallers because the movement is not as huge. Melissa Gatto, even though I thought she should have got that decision, she did not. So she falls from number 18 to number 26 in my women's flyweight rankings. Definitely hurts her a bit. And the other one is Guram Kutateladze. I had him high. I mean, again, he did beat Mateusz Gamrot. I had him at number 11 in my lightweight ranks. He falls to number 15 for me now after losing to Elves Brenner. I get it. I could have gone lower. I have a hard time putting him so much lower after he had the fights he had with Ismagulov and Gamrot. And then we'll get to the other side of this in a minute, which feels a bit weird for me too, but I'll finish with that. To the risers, the first big jump, Grant Dawson. I had not moved Grant Dawson up to the rankings area quite yet. I know the UFC did. The draw with Rick Glenn was holding me back, and he hadn't really beaten a big name to this point. You know, Jared Gordon, Mark Madsen. So I still had him down at 24, waiting for him to show it, and he did. So he is now my number 8 ranked lightweight after beating Damir Ismagulov. So a big jump for Grant Dawson. Michael Morales, a bit smaller of a jump. I had him at number 43. He is now my number 36 ranked welterweight after beating Max Griffin. It's been a nice steady climb up for him. Nursultan Ruziboev was obviously not ranked. He finishes Bruno Ferreira and jumps into my middleweight rankings at number 28, so a good start for him. Knocking out a guy who just knocked out Gregory Rodriguez, Hobo Cop, personal favorite of the show. And then 2 more huge jumps. Benoit Saint-Denis goes from number 64 in my lightweight rankings up to number 22.
Wow. Is that your biggest jump ever? Probably.
I mean, it's up there. It's a big one. What is that, 42 spots? You know, he was only 2-1 in the UFC. Again, the loss was at welterweight, but both of the lightweight wins were not against any names that were exactly established. And now he walks through a dude who just walked through Terrence McKinney and makes a large jump in the rankings. So he is now my number 22 ranked lightweight, kind of knocking on the door of some big fights here, as he obviously tried to throw out after this one. And then the other one that feels a bit wild to me, but I don't know what else to do, is this man, Elves Brenner. He was down at number 46 in my lightweight rankings, and I have him at 14 now. So I know the UFC didn't rank him. Again, I have Guram probably a little higher than they do. So I have him at 14. I mean, I guess you could argue a couple more guys should be ahead of him, but, like, this dude is a top 20 lightweight out of the friggin' clear blue sky. So we'll see if it's real. We'll see what happens next, but that was a monster win for Elves Brenner.
Yeah. Man.
And that is it for the week.
Okay. All right. Let us now go inside the MMA sphere with Omar Artola. Omar, let us know what's going on in the world of MMA outside of the cages.
Cages.
Cage. Cage.
There's a couple of things going on here. Let's see. So, first one we got here, Mike Perry out here. Y'all know I love Mike Perry. I think I love Mike Perry now more than I think I ever have. He is the king of BKFC, having so much success. Much success. I want to take credit for the BKFC idea because I feel like I was one of the first way back when to be like, that's the dude that's going to make BKFC. That's the one that's going to make him rich. But we won't do that. That's terrible. But he, after the win, Sean Strickland's win this weekend, he called for a fight with Sean Strickland in BKFC. Obviously, that's never going to happen. But doesn't the idea just kind of give you a little chub? You know what I mean? Just a little bit.
It'd be awesome for sure.
It's a fucking great fight. And just take the gloves off and just let those two crazy assholes just fight. That 100% sells. I think that's a great fight. Again, I don't think that it's ever going to happen. I wouldn't hold your breath. But what a fun idea. Next on the list here, we have Henry Cejudo out of his fight with Chito Vera. He apparently has a tear in his right shoulder that requires rehab. Chito has officially called for Peter Yan to step up and fight him in Boston. I wouldn't hold your breath on that one either. However, I do want to point out, Henry Cejudo is fucking King Chooch because he was just giving Aljamain Sterling all kinds of shit about, you know, whether Aljamain was going to fight or not. And, he's crying about his shoulder and his rotator and all this other stuff. And look, now Aljamain is still fighting and Henry Cejudo is not. What a chooch. That's all I got there. Next on my list, a little fun story here. If you guys, I would hope a majority of you, but if you guys aren't from the United States of America, you may not know who this gentleman is. Barry Bonds is one of the MLB Major League Baseball all-time leader in home runs. He officially has been promoted to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt. He got his belt from his coach, John J. Gennaro, at Evolve Training Center in San Francisco. Bonds is 58 years old and still taking on new skills. That's pretty dope.
Good for him. In that video of him getting awarded his new belt, I was struck. I was like, oh shit, that's Barry Bonds. Wow, he's a big dude. Like, you forget in like other pro sports that like they're giants.
Dude, but first of all, I was like, he looks so much smaller. He kind of uber-reamed on me, if we're being honest, because he's
what happens when you stop eating steroids.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, he was, if you look at the early pictures, right? I mean, that was the true Bonds, right? The ream, the regular ream, the re-ream. Right, and then he went uber ream or uber Bonds, right? And his head grew like 3 sizes and never went back. And now he's 58, chilling, living life, and practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seemingly clean because he is not gigantic. His head is, but not like the rest of him. So it's good. It's good. I've enjoyed it. It was a fun story. Next on the list, we have a little update about the fight this weekend. Sean Brady is out with his fight against Jack Della Maddalena. They have found a replacement on short notice in Josiah Harrell. Who the fuck is that guy? That is a perfectly fine response to that. I totally get that. He's got some accolades in smaller promotions and things like that. It's obviously going to be his debut, and we're going to see what he takes. I'm sure they're going to tout him as being this tough guy that, took a fight on short notice against a killer like Jack Della Maddalena. It's a good way to get your foot in the door. Even win or loss, I'm sure they're going to keep Josiah around for at least another couple fights, just sort of as a thank you for taking this short notice. So I'm sure it's a nice career move. I think the man is being fed to the sharks, if we're being wholly honest. But the reason why we're bringing this up now is because there was a little bit of information on what Sean Brady had going on. Apparently, he had a gnarly strep infection in his left elbow. If you've seen the pictures, his elbow looks like a balloon. It looks like a balloon. Yes. I know Mike likes that. It's one of the things he enjoys.
Such a great quality.
So it's one of those things. It was streptococcal something or another that got all up inside his elbow, so that he needs to have rounds of antibiotics in order for all that stuff to come down. There it is. It's Streptococcus B or Group B strep, GBS, bacteria that can cause severe infections. So he was definitely not cleared to fight. They have to clear that up first. So I'm sure we'll see him back sooner rather than later. It'll probably be a few weeks before that gets cleared up, and then we can get him back on the train. Next, we only have a handful of fight announcements. Right now it's Tuesday, so there probably won't be fight announcements until either later today or even tomorrow. So next week we will have probably a ton of fight announcements for you. But for this week, we are going to start here with Jake Matthews versus Miguel Baeza. That fight has been added to UFC's 291 card on July 29th. We have Juliana Juju Miller fighting Luana Santos. That fight has been added to UFC's Vegas card on August 12th. We also have Tracy Cortez back in the mix versus Yazmin Jasudavicius. That has also been added to September's 16th UFC card, along with the awaited return of Kelvin Gastelum at 170 pounds against Shavkat Rakhmonov. All fights that we are going to look forward to. And that is pretty much all we have for you this week.
Okay. Oh, baby. We've been going for a little over an hour, and we have quite the pay-per-view to bite into. So let's get right into it, guys. This coming weekend, going down at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, is UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. I cannot wait to talk about this main event. But before that, we have so many other fantastic mixed martial arts fights to talk about. Let us first... before we talk about all the fights, we're going to not dive into a handful of them. Anything that you guys just want to quickly spotlight for our listeners and viewers to check out this weekend at the pay-per-view?
I'll let Mark go because I know at least one of them's his boy, and I know he's got a couple of informations for some of the others.
We said we're going to do his fight, didn't we? Or are we not?
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Okay, yeah.
But
so
Simon too.
It's a deep card, 14-fight card. We've cut off the first 4 here that we're not going to preview. We're going to do the latter 10 on the card for you guys. So in those first 4, I feel like the most noteworthy thing is Cameron Simon. Cameron Simon is on the card. He's fighting Terrence Mitchell, who you may remember from the flyweight tough season, back when they were trying to get someone to fight DJ. So he's up at bantamweight now, making his debut in the UFC. Simon is definitely due to watch. I do think he wins that fight, but that would be my one note on these fights that we're skipping past here.
Anything else, Omar?
No, that was pretty much it. It's I'm sure a lot of the fights would be nice, but as far as name recognition and ones to look out for, that would probably be the one. Starting off the card, they do have Esteban Ribovics, who also had an interesting couple performances, I feel like, in the UFC so far. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the real meat and potatoes of this card is going to be the 10 fights that we're going to get into.
Okay, let's now get into this. The first fight we are queuing up, going down in the men's, was it flyweight or bantamweight?
Fly. Oh, wait, did they do a catch scenario since Taira just cut weight a few weeks ago? Or no?
I know not.
It is a catch weight. Yep. So it's probably 130 pounds.
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's good. That makes me feel even better about Taira.
Tatsuro Taira taking on Edgar Pitbull Chairez. Omar, can you help me with that name pronunciation? His last name? Is it Chairez?
Chairez.
Gotta be, right? What else could it be?
Let's roll with it. So we have Taira, the 23-year-old out of Naha, Japan, undefeated coming into this fight. 13-0 thus far. He is undefeated in the UFC as well, of course, has 3-0 in the UFC. 10 of his wins coming by way of finish, knockout, or submission. 3 knockouts, 7 subs. Good stuff coming from him. Taking on the debuting Edgar Chairez out of Baja California, Mexicali, Baja California, Mexico. 10-4 as a pro, 6 subs, 4 knockouts. That's right, no wins going the distance. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
All right, Taira is a small favorite of minus 1,000. Edgar Chairez is plus 600 as the underdog. I was a little concerned about Taira cutting weight again, despite just having done it 2 weeks ago when his other fight fell out. So I'm happy to hear that it is at 130 pounds. That definitely helps him a bit. And with that said, I think he should be fine here. I think he probably turns back to Chairez without a ton of trouble. Striking is probably Chairez's best hope, so my guess is Taira aims to take this thing right to the mat, and I'm going to say it's a round 1 submission for Tatsuro Taira.
Omar?
I like it. I also like Taira in this fight as well. I think Chairez is going to have some success probably going forward potentially. I know this is his UFC debut. He didn't do well in the Contender Series. But I don't think that this is going to be the one that he's going to get the win on currently. I think Taira is on a really nice tear. I think his momentum is a little too much. His hype is really nice. And I think that instead of a submission, I think he's actually going to get his KO in this fight and finally put somebody on the mat in the UFC. So I'm going to go with a second round KO.
I also like Taira in this fight. Let's keep it rolling. Still undefeated, getting his hand raised. I'll say he gets a club and sub in round 2. Okay.
Like
All right. Hold on 1 second. Let me get this up here. There it is. Okay. Light heavyweight division. Jimmy Crute taking on Alonzo Menifield. A fun one. Jimmy the Brute Crute fighting out of Victoria, Australia. The 27-year-old. He's 12-3 as a pro with 1 draw. Looking to get back in the win column after suffering back-to-back losses and then that draw against Alonzo Menifield. They're running it back. That's right. A majority draw. Menifield once again queuing him up. 13-3 as a pro. 35 years old out of Dallas, Texas. 10 knockouts, 2 subs on his record. Mark, start us off.
All right, so it's 2 inches of height for Crute, 2 inches of reach for Menifield. Obviously, we just saw these guys in there very recently. And this one's interesting to me, man. Oh, sorry, I skipped the odds for you guys. It's nearly a pick 'em. Jimmy Crute is favored. He's minus 120. Menifield is minus 105, so they're both minus money. Yeah, it's interesting to me because I thought Crute could beat Menifield the first time. I feel like I don't like where my mic is. There we go. That's better. I thought Crute could beat Menifield the first time. Then he kind of got his ass kicked at certain points when they fought. Obviously ended up with the draw because he did come back in the third, which was encouraging, and then the fence grab from Menifield, we end up with a draw. But, like, he took some damage from Menifield in that fight. But that being said, I can't shake myself from wanting to pick Crute again here. And it may be dumb because his defensive striking leaves a lot to be desired, and we saw that get exposed in the first fight. He gets hit with big shots way too often and way too clean, and Menifield is just not the guy that you want hitting you. But, man, I really thought he could tap Menifield last time, and now that he has a tape of a full fight between the two of them, I think he can tap him this time. I think he can come in with a really good game plan when it comes to his entries, now that he gets to watch this tape back, now that he has a feel for Menifield. And I think he can get it to the mat more often than last time, not get clipped immediately, which obviously changed the whole fight. And be more patient this time, not as hectic of a fight. I really think he can get this thing to the mat, be patient, work till a submission comes, and find it. So, his grappling is still really high level, despite the crazy mess of that last fight. So I'm going to say Jimmy Crute, round 2 submission.
Omar.
I don't hate the take. I think when I look back to that fight, I think when I think about who has to go back home and make more improvements, make more adjustments, I just see the hallmark being a lot more for Jimmy Crute than for Alonzo Menifield, just based on their recent performance. Menifield, on top of that, has also significantly looked better in his last performances than I think he's ever looked before to me. And so that upward trajectory, even before the Jimmy Crute fight, kind of has me in a positive state picking Alonzo Menifield here. And I say that I think having picked Jimmy Crute also the first time, because I'm pretty high on Jimmy Crute. I do really like Jimmy Crute. But I'm not emotional about either one of these guys, so I think I could pick this fight pretty well. And Jimmy Crute, like I said, I think just has a lot more ground to cover to really give Menifield, I think, something to really worry about, right? That third round, I think, was really Menifield having worked so much in those first 2 rounds that I think he kind of gassed himself out. Obviously, we had the fence grab that didn't help his, the overall decision of that fight, but that fight was Menifield's fight. And I think once we get back into it, I don't see Jimmy Crute all of a sudden being able to take him down at will and being able to do all of these different things to him that he wasn't able to do the first fight, especially considering we've had, 4 months, 5 months? I can't see it, man. I'm going to go with Menifield here by decision.
Yeah, I think that was Menifield's fight as well. When the scores were read as a majority draw, I saw a lot of disappointment and just defeat on Menifield's face, man. He just was just like, really, I'm so exhausted. I really didn't do enough in that fight. Those
he gave it away.
Rounds, he was really, but he beat Jimmy Crute up bad in those first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
But credit to Jimmy Crute, he stayed in it, and he stayed active enough to get a majority draw to make it into a draw. That being said, I agree with Omar. I don't think Crute is going to make up enough ground. I think the talent and power difference is in favor of Alonzo Menifield. I'm going to see him get his hand raised this time. He leaves no doubt on the judges' scorecards, and I think it will go the distance, though. I'll give it to Menifield by UD. Okay, moving right along. In the women's, what division is this in?
It's fucking Yazmin's division. That's what fucking division it is right now. Let's go.
Yes, women's strawweight division, excuse me. Yazmin Jauregui taking on Gomes. Jauregui, a 24-year-old out of Mexico, undefeated coming into this weekend, 10-0 as a pro, 7 knockouts. She's 2-0 in the UFC, most recently TKOing Estela Nunes back in December. She will be standing across from the Brazilian young prospect in her own right, Denise Gomes, 23 years old, out of Brazil, 7-2, 5 knockouts. She's 1-1 in the UFC after winning on Contender Series, most recently defeating Bruna Brazil by TKO back in April of this year. Omar started off. Your girl, Jauregui, back in the octagon. Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah. You know how I said my last pick I wasn't emotional about? I'm fucking emotional about this one, guys. I love Yazmin Jauregui, man. I loved her since the moment I saw her fight Ismael. I forget her name now.
Yazmin Lucindo.
Thank you. Ismael Lucindo. Both of those women I was super high on just off of their fight together, and I think that that's probably the most difficult fight either woman is going to have for a little bit during their UFC tenure. And I continue that thought process as Jauregui fights Denise Gomes. I think Jauregui here is going to eat. I think this is going to be another performance for her to just really show out and really have a highlight. I think that she's able to use her boxing and use her distance management and her speed to really put the beats on Denise Gomes. So I fully expect Gomes to get her ass whooped. I think Jauregui is going to KO her in 2 rounds, and this will be the first KO that Denise has suffered since the beginning of her professional MMA career.
Mark?
So Jauregui is -400 as the favorite. Gomes is +300 as the dog. There's 1 inch of height, 1 inch of reach on the Jauregui side. I can't say that name quick. I need to say it slow. My mouth isn't built that way. Yeah, I am in the same boat for sure. We've been high on Jauregui. Omar has been really high on her. I think that she will outmatch Gomes technique-wise, and I think what my pick is going to be is just that she kind of dictates and controls the fight for the most part and rolls to a decision victory. But I will say that Denise Gomes showed in her last fight that she is in there to march you down. And if that's the case and she fights that style of fight against Jauregui, it very easily could be a highlight reel knockout for Yazmin. So, debated it, but I will say UD.
I think Jauregui is going to keep rolling here and stay undefeated, and I think she's going to get her hand raised. Let's go with the knockout finish. Let's go round 2 TKO over Gomes. Now let us move on. Yeah, we are unanimous for Jauregui. Let us move on to the welterweight division. Jack Della Maddalena taking on the young debuting prospect or UFC debuting prospect in Josiah Harrell. So we have Jack Della Maddalena, a favorite on this show, I think I'm confident in saying. The 26-year-old out of Perth, Australia. His record, an impressive one, 14-2 with 11 knockouts. Add 2 subs to that. Only 1 win going the distance. In his 2 losses, he's been finished both times, once by knockout, once by submission. They were the very first 2 professional bouts of his career. He's gone 14-0 since then. Most recently, clubbing and subbing Randy Brown back in February of this year at UFC 284. He will be going up against the debuting Josiah Harrell. Muscle Hamster is his nickname. He is undefeated himself, 7-0, fighting out of Columbus, Ohio. 4 knockouts, 3 subs. All his wins are finishes. Mark, start us off. Give us your take over Jack Della Maddalena taking on the debuting Harrell.
His nickname is Muscle Hamster. Wasn't that someone else's nickname?
Dog, I thought it said Muscle Hammer until he said something, and then I had to look back, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Oh, I just googled it. Yeah, it's a running back who's playing the NFL. I knew that nickname.
Funny.
Yeah, I have a hunch we may all be unanimous again on this one. JDM is minus 1100. Josiah Harrell is plus 650. Obviously, this stinks. We went from the fantastic matchup of JDM and Sean Brady. Then we heard rumors of Holland stepping in, of Chris Curtis stepping in. I feel like there was one other big name I'm blanking on, but we end up with Josiah Harrell. I'm not sure why we couldn't get one of those bigger ones made. International Fight Week. You would have thought maybe they could work something out, but we did not. We get an unproven fighter here. He usually fights at lightweight. He's going to be 4 inches shorter than Jack. He's going to be at a 6-inch reach disadvantage. He's stepping in on short notice. He fought like 3 weeks ago. He's walking in there against one of the greatest prospects on God's green earth at the moment. With all that being said, now he'll win by like cartwheel kick or some shit. But yeah, I'm clearly going to go with Jack Della Maddalena. I will say by round 1 knockout, because that is what he does, and Harrell should not be able to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, if anything, that Jack is going up against an undefeated prospect. So, it's hard to – we don't have much data on how this guy can lose this fight. But how do you not go with Jack? I mean, the guy fights in sort of a magical way. Got to think he's going to find a finish again over this guy in hand. Josiah Harrell's first loss of his career. If Sherdog's information is exhaustive, Harrell hasn't lost ever in his pro or amateur careers. That being said, got to think Jack, who is so accurate and such great power for 170, got to think he's going to find a finish here. I'll say round 1 knockout for Maddalena, really surprising Harrell and showing that there are levels to this for the undefeated youth. Omar, bring us home for this one.
So the easy answer is Jack Della Maddalena, right? Like that's where we're all picking. That's what I'm going to pick as well. But I want to give a little bit of context here as to what's happening, right? The fight is short notice, and so we're bringing somebody in for Jack Della Maddalena to still fight, right? International Fight Week is too big for you to just be like, well, I guess we'll reschedule it for a fucking card that no one gives a shit about, right? It's too big. It's a big spot for Jack Della Maddalena. So many eyes will be on him, and I think more than anything, it's going to be his ability to perform that's going to make the big difference. Josiah Harrell, though, is a guy that hasn't lost yet in his career, has also basically killed everybody in his career, and you may have already seen this dude in a viral video in the MMA world. Not too long ago, like a month ago, there was a video of a man inside of the LFA cage who picked up a gentleman and ran him through the cage door. The gentleman who ran him through the cage door was Josiah Harrell. So we know that the man's got tenacity. We know the man's there to fight. I do think that this is one of those, there are levels to this thing, so I don't think that there's going to be a lot there. But to think that there is not going to be a real threat in Josiah Harrell that Jack Della Maddalena has to deal with, I think is a little naive. And on top of that, there's not a ton of video on Josiah Harrell. And so, Jack Della Maddalena is not going to come up with a whole new game plan and study all this, all of these things and things like that on Josiah Harrell. So he's got to go in and he's got to rely on his own skills and his own ability to finish, and can't really worry about Josiah Harrell too much. But Like I said, there are levels to this, and I think that Jack Della Maddalena is at that point where this fight shouldn't be one that he can't handle, even if it takes him a little while to do so. But I think it will. I don't think it'll be quick. I think he will want to feel him out and just make sure that he's approaching the fight the right way. So I'm going to go with KO round 2.
Oh, baby. All right. Let's move on to the welterweight division once again. The veteran and former UFC welterweight champion Robbie Lawler taking on Nico Price. So ruthless Robbie Lawler, the 41-year-old out of San Diego, California. 29-16 as a pro with 1 no contest. Most recently coming off of a loss against Brian Barberino, where he got TKO'd by Barberino back in July of last year. So 1 year almost to the day for Robbie Lawler. Nico Price, the hybrid, the 33-year-old out of Cape Coral, Florida, 15-6, 2 no contests, coming off of a loss against Phil Rowe by TKO back in December. Omar, staying with you, give us your take and your pick for Lawler versus Price.
Yeah, this one on a personal note kind of sucks. I love Nico Price. I'm a big fan of Robbie Lawler, obviously, so to see one of these guys have to lose, especially in the trajectory that they've both kind of been going in, kind of sucks. Robbie Lawler obviously is the guy that has the equalizers in his hand, right? The man can knock anybody out if he lands flush. And Nico Price is that awkward dude. He's a guy that's very difficult to prepare for because you can't get training partners that do wild shit like Nico Price does. And once you start getting into chaos and things like that, you know, it becomes an entirely different ballgame. Robbie Lawler is one of the kings of chaos, but his chaos is a lot less scrambly and overly wild than somebody like a Nico Price or even like a Brandon Royval as an example. I think Robbie Lawler's at a point in his career where he is obviously very beatable. There was a point where it was very difficult to see anybody really being able to put paws on Robbie Lawler and put him out. But I think Nico Price, I think as far as levels are concerned, I think Nico Price has seen so many looks and is so versatile that while he does obviously have there's obviously the opportunity for him to get knocked out by Robbie Lawler, I do still think that he has a good chance to get wild and get weird and get crazy, and maybe even confuse Robbie Lawler a little bit enough where he can win 2 out of the 3 rounds. So I'm going to go with Nico Price here by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, I hate seeing guys hold on this long. I mean, Lawler is now in his 40s, the former UFC champ. I believe that Robbie Lawler gave us maybe the greatest title run that we've ever seen in terms of, obviously it wasn't the longest run. Other guys have had much longer title runs than he had, but in terms of the quality and entertainment factor of all of his title fights, I call it like the greatest title run ever, like the most memorable title run ever. His fights with Rory McDonald, with Carlos Condit, with Johnny Hendricks. I mean, all of them are classics. Like all of his title fights are classics.
Yeah.
So he will be missed when he decides to lay the gloves down. That being said,
that's what I was just going to say. This is it. If you guys don't know that, this is his
Oh,
retirement.
Is he done?
Yeah, he has said it. This is his last fight.
oh, my bad. God damn
Oh
it.
well, fuck.
That being said, I think that
Because I want him to win. I want him to win on his way out. You know what I mean? Like, fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I think this is not a bad matchup for him to try to get the win, but that being said, I do see Nico Price getting his hand raised in this one. He's just the attributes he's going to have over Lawler, the length, the busyness that he's going to have. I don't think he's going to get the finish, but I think he's going to land more on Robbie, make the fight awkward, make it his kind of fight, and I'm going to say Nico by UD. Mark?
Okay, so Nico's actually a pretty decent favorite. He's minus 270. Robbie Lawler is plus 220.
Wow.
Disrespect.
Nico's
Wow.
1 inch taller. He's got 2 inches of reach on Robbie. I actually thought he had more than that, so I was surprised there was only
'cause he has
2.
very long arms.
I like Nico Price. I've picked him plenty of times on here, but as soon as this was made, I was like, man, I feel like that's kind of the right type of matchup that a 41-year-old Robbie Lawler could win. Like, and I know he was finished by Barberena in his last one, but he was landing a fuck ton on Barberena to the point that Barberena almost had to say, I'm going to walk forward and hope my head doesn't fall off because it's the only way I'm going to get to Robbie Lawler. And if he's landing like that on Nico Price, I don't know that he stands up the same way Barberena did. He's tough as hell, too. Obviously, we've seen him in wars. But I kind of think he slows more. I think the arms start to look heavy sometimes when he's getting beat on. And it sounds counterintuitive because Nico Price is a great third-round fighter. He always comes out hard at the end of the fights. But I kind of feel like maybe Lawler could get him out before we get there. And I was torn on it. And that was before I realized this was Robbie Lawler's retirement fight. And then once I saw that, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I was already thinking it could go that way. I'm going to pull the trigger. Robbie Lawler, round 2, knockout.
Wow. Let's go. Ruthless. Love him. Okay, moving on up to the middleweight division. UFC 290. Bo Nickel taking on Tresean Mr. Vicious Gore. So Bo Nickel, the superstar prospect. There are many. There are prospects and there are superstars, but there aren't many superstar prospects. The 27-year-old out of State College, Pennsylvania, undefeated at 4-0 as a pro. He quickly recap his career. He got 1 professional win at IFC 3. Then he got 2 back-to-back wins, both at Dana White's Contender Series. And then his first UFC win over Jamie Pickett back in March of this year. All finishes either 1 knockout, 3 subs. So he has not gone to the judges' scorecards yet as an amateur or as a pro. He will be taking on another young prospect in Tresean Gore, the 29-year-old out of South Carolina, 4-2 as a professional, coming off of a win over Josh Fremd back in October of 2022. His record stands at 1-2 thus far in the UFC. He lost his first 2 UFC bouts against Brian Battle and Cody Brundage. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Nickel versus Gore.
To me, this is such a hard fight to pick because Tresean Gore is talented. He's a very talented prospect. He's had his loss during his Ultimate Fighter finale. He obviously had his loss to Cody Brundage. I can't say that kid's name to save my life. And then just recently had his good performance against Josh Fremd. But then you have Bo Nickel here, who, like you said, is very hyped. Very hyped, doesn't have a ton of experience in the MMA world, but the experience he does have are all finishes. And it's all been on the back of the technique that he brings with his wrestling. Tresean Gore, I believe, is also a wrestler to a certain extent, if I'm not mistaken. I think he does have a wrestling background somewhere. But I don't think from what I understand, Bo Nickel seems to be on a different level with the type of collegiate wrestling that he brings to the table, and his grappling skills in general on the ground. So, I think Bo Nickel can get it done. I'm not like super high on Bo Nickel, and I think a part of it is because everybody wants me to be super fucking high on Bo Nickel, and I'm just like, no, I'm not ready yet. I need to see some more shit. You're not just going to throw random dudes at him and then him choking people out and then be like, see, I told you, he's like the greatest ever. I'm not ready for that. But I do think that this is a fight that Bo Nickel can win. So I'm going to go with Bo Nickel by 2nd round submission here.
I appreciate your judiciousness in assessing this young guy's talent. That being said, similar to I like a guy like Chimaev, I was super high on when he came into the UFC. And a lot of people were trying to be like, pump the brakes. He just defeated Reese McKee in a minute, but it's Reese McKee. But I'm like, it's the eye test. It's like the way he's fighting these other, sure, like lower level professional fighters, but professional fighters. And he's walking through them like he's fighting a middle schooler. And that's what we have here in Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel is like the American Chimaev, man. He just cuts through these guys like a hot knife through butter, man. So that being said, yes, I agree. Tresean Gore, talented guy. That being said, I think that Bo Nickel is going to eat on Saturday. And I want a Bo Nickel finish. I want a first-round finish, and I want a big call-out immediately after on the mic. Let's go. Bo Nickel, round 1, rear naked choke. Let's go. Mark.
Speaking of Bo Nickel hype, he is a minus 1250 favorite.
That's fucking crazy.
That's a little.
That's crazy, dog.
As the underdog, plus 750. 1 inch of height and reach on the Bo Nickel side. And yeah, for me, it is also the eye test, or even more so, the way that Bo Nickel has picked up MMA. Like, we've seen dudes who were super high level at something, transition to MMA, and there's bumps in the road, and there's whatever. And I know he hasn't fought anyone who's, remotely established yet, if we're being honest. But the way he has seemed to so naturally pick up MMA and striking and all of this for a guy who was purely a wrestler for so long is enough to kind of make me be like, oh shit, this could be interesting fast. So, there's work to be done. There's a lot to prove still. This is a good next step. But I'm definitely on Bo Nickel here. Trey Shongor has looked good at times through tough and through a 3-fight UFC career. Obviously, he's only 1-2. But he did look really good against Josh Fremd in his last fight. You can see potential in him, but, he has to fight Bo Nickel now, and I don't think it's going to go well. He doesn't have the requisite wrestling or grappling to deter what Bo wants to do, I don't think. I think he's got to come out and kind of just throw hammers and hope one lands, because once Bo gets a hold of him, I think it's going to be downhill pretty fast. So I will say Bo Nickel, round 1 submission.
And here's my thing about Bo Nickel, right? It's the kid is obviously skilled. It's not like you can't watch him fighting and be like, oh, he's trash. Like, that's not, that can't be a real thing. But at the same time, he hasn't fought anybody who even on paper is supposed to stop his wrestling. So when somebody does, what happens? And that's really where I'm at. And that's why I'm not ready to just dive in head first. You know what I mean?
The question is, though, who can until we hit, like, the top 10?
Right.
And maybe people can. I'm not saying
there you go.
The answer is no. I'm just saying his wrestling might be that unstoppable.
Sure. That's a valid
It'll be
point.
interesting to see if and when somebody, like, punches him in the face, to see how he reacts to it, obviously.
100%.
Yeah. But there are guys. I mean, there's guys in that, top 30-ish area who, like, can wrestle and do carry power. And I'm sure that's maybe where he'll go next. Like, if he gets a win here, it'll probably be a guy who fits that mold.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the lightweight division. Man, I love this card. What a stacked card this is. So many great fights.
Yeah, it's a shame we lost the JDM Brady one, because that
Facts.
was like putting it over the top. To have that on the undercard was like silliness.
Yep. Okay, Jalen the Tarantula Turner taking on Dan the Hangman Hooker. So Jalen Turner, 28-year-old out of San Bernardino, California, 13-6 as a pro, 9 knockouts. Looking to get back in the win column, losing a split decision to Mateusz Gamrot back in March, taking on the Kiwi, Dan the Hangman Hooker out of Auckland, New Zealand, 33 years old, 22-12 as a pro, 11 knockouts, add 7 submission victories to that. Got back in the win column back in November against Claudio Puelles, finishing him with a body kick and subsequent strikes. Mark, go first this time. Give us your take and your pick. Turner versus Hooker.
This is a great fight, perfect fight. I'm glad they went back to it. Obviously, they tried to book this one once before. Odds are a little wider than I thought we'd see. Jalen Turner's minus 250 as the favorite. Dan Hooker is a plus 200 underdog. Size-wise, they have the same reach here. Turner is 3 inches taller. And, yeah, this is a tough one for me to call. I kind of debated this, but I keep ending up in the same place. I love Dan Hooker. Even at his low points, I've been a believer in the game of Dan Hooker. He just looked great in his last fight, which really makes me want to believe here. And I had picked him to do that, so it felt good to see him come out and look that dominant. But Jalen Turner has also shown us how good he is and how dangerous he is, so it's a scary pick to make. And they're honestly very similar in a lot of ways. The danger they carry on the feet, the way they can snatch up a sub, the way they can scramble. I think for me, this one really may just come down to which man can absorb more damage and keep going, or which man can avoid getting smoked by like one clean shot. And I think in that regard, I'm more worried about Dan Hooker because he gets hit, man. We've seen it more and more recently. I think it's easy to forget because he was in a matchup in the last fight against Claudio Puelles where he didn't even have to really worry about getting hit because that's just not what Puelles was trying to do in there. So he kind of got to shine. But he gets caught a bunch. Jalen Turner's long as hell, so he shouldn't have a problem getting to him. And for the most part, the way to beat Jalen Turner has been to out-wrestle him, and I don't really think Hooker is going to look to go that route. I mean, he could, but I don't know if he is that far beyond what Jalen Turner offers on the ground to win that way. So I think it's going to mostly play out on the feet, and I think I just see Dan getting clipped at some point in a competitive fight. But I think the wear and tear is getting to be a little bit more than I wish it was for Dan Hooker, and I'll say Turner gets it done. I will say round 2 TKO Jalen Turner.
Omar?
Yeah, man, I've been a Jalen Turner guy for a long time now before he was ranked and kind of leading all the way up to this point. And we're at these moments now where it's difficult and painful for me to pick against guys that I really, really like. But just like Mark, I think that this fight favors Turner a little bit more. I think the little bit of size advantage that he has with the way both of them strike, especially with their distance management, I think will end up working in Jalen Turner's favor. And I think both of them are aggressive. They're both very aggressive guys who like to strike, who like to throw a lot of big shots in there. And again, to Mark's point, I think where we really saw Jalen Turner have a hole in his game was with not even necessarily the wrestling, but the Gamrot type of wrestling, right? That continuous, I'm going to take you down. Oh, you got back up? Well, I'm taking you down again. Oh, you're back up? Well, I'm taking you down again. And, you know, it is one thing for that, for a Jalen Turner in that position to be able to keep getting up and keep working and keep trying to do something in those positions and not succeeding. But it also is something you have to take in consideration from the other side of that coin, where somebody like a Mateusz Gamrot can put that pace on continuously, because wrestling like that is also something that's not easy to do, even when you're the one doing it and winning. And I don't see Dan Hooker being able to apply that kind of pressure, that kind of consistent wrestling. It's just not his game. And I think him switching up his game is probably going to cost him way more than it would be worth. So I don't see that being the case. And I think that Jalen Turner here, like I said, is just going to have a little bit more edge over Dan Hooker. So I'm going to go with Jalen Turner here by a very, very closely contested decision, unanimous decision.
This is a fight where I don't want to see either of these guys lose. Yeah. I'm a big fan. I'm a believer in Jalen Turner and his ability at 155 to keep marching up the rankings of the Shark Tank that is the lightweight division. Because of his striking prowess, because of his attributes, being 6'3" at lightweight is tremendous. Gotta love Dan Hooker, man. The guy, he's a fan favorite and rightfully so. He's a vet. Plus all the stuff that he went through, like in COVID and like being separated from his family for forever. You just root for the guy. I just want to see him succeed at life. That being said, I'm going to go with Jalen Turner for this one. I loved Mark's assessment. I think that they're both proficient strikers, but I think Dan is the one who's going to probably get caught and maybe crumble first. So I'll say Jalen Turner towards the end of round 1 catches Dan Hooker and gets a really nice first round finish.
That's how you know Mike's a fan. He just combined Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker. He doesn't want anybody to lose.
That's right. Okay. Going on to what easily could be a main event on any card. Robert Whittaker taking on Dricus du Plessis. Whew. We have Australia. We have South Africa. Let's go. Bobby Knuckles, the Reaper, the 32-year-old out of South Wales, Sydney, Australia. 24-6 as a pro. 9 knockouts, 5 submissions added to that. Coming off of a very nice UD over Marvin Vettori back in September of last year. He will be taking on the rising South African Dricus du Plessis out of Pretoria, South Africa. 19-2 as a pro. Damn, what a record. 18 knockouts, 10 subs, only one of his wins going the distance. The man is a finisher. He's a bruiser at middleweight. Most recently finishing Derek Brunson in the second round. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take and your pick of du Plessis versus Whittaker.
I mean, I'm so interested to see what the line is, to be honest, because Whitaker is that dude at middleweight. If there is no Izzy, Robert Whitaker is your champion. Robert Whitaker hasn't lost to anybody since, other than Izzy, I should say, since 2014. Wonderboy Thompson was the last person to beat him, and that was in a completely different division he shouldn't have even been in. And once he got to 185, he's been murking motherfuckers ever since, and Izzy is the only person who's been standing in his way. I don't think that changes here. Yeah, go for it.
So, yeah, the bookies are giving the appropriate respect to Robert Whitaker. He and the bettors, I guess. Who knows what it opened at. But Robert Whitaker is minus 380. Dricus is plus 290.
No, that's about right. That's about right. It's a tough task because when you really sit back and you think about exactly where Dricus is gonna have areas of success, I don't think anybody will die on that sword. I really don't. I like Dricus's biggest attribute, in my opinion, is his ground game and his wrestling. And I think he gets not one off on Robert Whitaker, for being honest. I would be wholly surprised if he gets a single takedown on Robert Whitaker. And I think everywhere in between there, Robert Whitaker pieces up Dricus du Plessis with the hands, with the feet, with the explosions. We're going to see Robert Whitaker bouncing. We're going to see Dricus trying to get some kind of stability in that square off. And Robert Whitaker is going to close distance and he's going to crack him. And that is going to be the entire story for that fight. And I think every time a takedown is had or attempted, Robert Whitaker is going to be able to stuff them, and he's going to make Dricus pay. And I think the longer that goes on, we're going to see Dricus begin to crumble. I give Dricus credit as far as his toughness. I don't think he's going to get finished. I don't think he's going to give up in that fight, no matter how much damage he has, unless he gets put out. So I will give the decision out of respect to Dricus, but I think Robert Whitaker takes that one home, and it's all 5 rounds for Robert Whitaker. 50-45.
Mark?
Wait. Is this 3 fucking rounds?
3 fucking rounds, yeah.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, that sucks.
All right. 30-27, though.
Right? I mean, it's certainly 3 rounds, right? It's got to be.
It does not have to be. It could absolutely be 5 rounds, the bastards.
No, but I'm saying we would have heard about it if it was 5.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah,
yet another example of my point that fights involving a top 5 fighter should be 5 rounds. Yep, 3 rounds. Yeah, so as you heard, almost 4-1 favorite for Whitaker. 1 inch of height and 2.5 inches of reach on the Dricus side of things, so he is a bit bigger. He's also the larger man frame-wise. So, yeah, would it be fun here if Dricus showed out and he beat Robert Whitaker and set up an enormous fight with Israel Adesanya? It sure fucking would. Am I going to pick Robert Whitaker to lose a fight? I certainly am not. The dude is so good. He continually shows it against every single opponent aside from Izzy. I mean, he even showed it against Izzy in the second fight, if we're being honest. He looked pretty good in that fight.
Yeah.
We've said before that he's beaten a bunch of these guys better than Izzy has beaten them. I mean, he's unreal. And I just don't see what Dricus du Plessis has that's going to allow him to overcome the gulf of technique that lies between him and Robert Whitaker. And I don't want to knock Dricus. He has been great. He's been very impressive in the way he's gone through these fights. He absorbs damage. He's strong as hell. He does not stop coming forward. He carries a lot of natural power. He's an imposing wrestler, but not against Robert Whitaker. Whitaker's just not going to allow himself to be taken down outside of maybe a random one at some point in time. He is going to be better on the feet, plain and simple. He will be a step ahead. He'll be making Dricus miss. Dricus's punches will be, finishing an inch or two away from Whitaker's face as Whitaker darts to the outside. He is going to land to the head of Dricus. He'll mix up his shots. I mean, think about the way that Till was landing against Dricus when he was able to ever stay on his friggin' feet.
In that one round.
Whitaker can certainly do that. And he's not going to fall apart under the pressure of Dricus either, the way other guys have. That's what Dricus does to people. He's so composed, and he just keeps coming through the damage, and guys crumble. Robert Whitaker is not going to crumble. He will be there for all 15 minutes if he needs to be. So I will go with Robert Whitaker UD as well. I will just add one thing that I just thought of as I was going through this that I don't know if you guys have watched Countdown. They gave the stats on Dricus du Plessis' nose. Remember we've talked about this before, how he has said the reason it always looks like he's like huffing and puffing in there is because he has a lot of trouble breathing through his nose and he needs to get it operated on. We talked about this after his last fight.
Yeah.
But he finally did get the operation. And they said that the stats pre-operation were that one of his nostrils was getting 0% oxygen. So basically a useless nostril. And the other was getting 8% oxygen.
What?
So 8 out of a possible 200%. So 4% oxygen was going through this man's nose through his UFC career thus far. So, and now supposedly it's 100%. So will we see superhuman Dricus now that he can breathe through his nose? I don't know. I did think that was mind-blowing to hear that he was getting 4% oxygen through his fucking nose. But the pick is Robert Whittaker, UD. Just felt like I had to share that because it's pretty crazy.
We are unanimous, taking him by UD. Unanimous by unanimous. I mean, I like seeing the fresh blood climbing up middleweight with Duplessis. But that being said, I think Whittaker he's so talented, as he's shown over the years, and I think he's going to be better everywhere. The only edge I give Duplessis is in brute strength and power. What did we say about his last couple fights? That like Duplessis is like he has the best worst gas. He has the best worst cardio. Like he always fights like he's gassed, but he just has this will about him.
Well, that's what I mean. I wonder if it's going to look the same now that he can actually breathe.
Like, will his mouth actually be closed in this fight?
Yeah, and he won't.
Is it possible?
Like, you know,
maybe he'll be breathing through his nose a little bit more. But Duplessis always comes in shape. He always comes correct with the great cardio, with a tremendous will and competitiveness. Great power for the division. But I'm not picking against Bobby Knuckles, man. Like he said, I think after he fought, was it a Vittori or Cannonier? He's like, I make people hate fighting.
Vittori, yep.
He's such a great kickboxer, and he's so proficient everywhere. Got to see he's getting his hand raised in this one, so I'm going to go as well. Whittaker by unanimous decision. Let's move on now to the co-main event, UFC 290. Brandon Moreno taking on Alexandre Pantoja. Rematch coming up. Brandon Moreno, the assassin baby, out of Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico. 29 years old, 21-6 with 2 draws, 5 knockouts, 11 more wins by submission victory, coming off back-to-back wins over Kai Kara-France, and then winning the title back from Davison Figueiredo back in January. He will be standing across from Alexandre Pantoja, who defeated Brandon Moreno back in 2018. Pantoja, the 33-year-old out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the Cannibal, his nickname, 25-5 as a professional, with 8 knockouts and 10 submission wins on his record. He's riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this title fight this weekend over Manel Kape, Brandon Royval, and Alex Perez back in July. Omar, start us off. Is it Viva Mexico, or is Pantoja going to upset your boy?
We're back at emotional here, gentlemen. I ain't picking against fucking Brandon Moreno. It's not going to happen. I will say that Pantoja is a very, very dangerous opponent. And knowing full well that Brandon Moreno has now dropped 2 fights to Pantoja, one of which was an exhibition, whatever, and tough, but still a fight that he definitely lost and got submitted on. Last one that they had, obviously, Brandon Moreno lost a unanimous decision. Alexandre Pantoja is a bad, bad dude, man, and he hasn't gotten any worse. His recent win against Alex Perez was disgusting. His recent win against Brandon Royval, also disgusting. Was also able to beat Manel Kape, who we also know was kind of on the rise a little bit, was able to kind of put that one to bed. And Brandon Moreno is a guy that consistently exceeds expectations, and I think because of his demeanor and his lack of shit talking and like all of the things that make Brandon Moreno the guy that we love, there's also a lot of that assumption that he's not that dangerous, right? You know, he's a nice guy, he's this, he's that, he's the other, but you know, he's not really that nice. And look at him now. He's a champion. He's a beast. He's a guy that has now finished Davison Figueiredo, who at the time was considered to be like one of the best, or probably still considered to be one of the best flyweights in the world, but somebody who people couldn't beat, and he's beaten him now. Kai Kara-France with the win on that. So Brandon Moreno has definitely exceeded expectations where there were none for him, and he's in a very unique position now where he can continue to build on his legacy against somebody who he has now lost twice against. It's a big order. It's a tall order. I actually don't really know if he's going to be able to do it, but we're going to run with it. So Brandon Moreno, split decision. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think he takes at least 3 out of the 5 rounds.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that Moreno evens this one with professional fights with Pantoja. Yes, Pantoja's so dangerous. Yes, Pantoja beat him before. But, man, Moreno has gotten better and better and better. And the guy is just electric now. Pantoja, though, he is stout and built for the division and very durable. And I don't see Moreno getting the finish on this one. I agree with you. I say Moreno guts this one out over a very tough and very dangerous Pantoja and gets a 48-40. What is it? 48-46 on the scorecards? Three rounds to 2.
48-47.
Thank you.
Have you watched any MMA before? Or?
Mark, what's your take and pick? Take and pick.
All right, so Brandon Moreno, getting some respect. He is minus 200 as the favorite.
Okay.
Pantoja is plus 165 as the underdog. 2 inches of height and 2 inches of reach on the Brandon Moreno side, which is not. I was envisioning them as being the same size. Didn't realize Moreno's a bit bigger there. Here we go. I am so pumped for this fight. It's not every day you get to see a champion going into a title fight trying to avenge an 0-2 record against the challenger, and that's what we have here.
True.
So that's a cool dynamic. I'm also really glad to see Alexandre Pantoja get his title shot because he is that good. He has been good for a while. He absolutely deserves it, and I'm glad he can finally check that box of getting to fight for a UFC title. It's tough, man. If Brandon is willing to grapple in this fight, which he very well may be, it's going to get really interesting because Pantoja is disgusting on the mat. If Moreno's game plan is to really fight to keep this thing standing for the most part, then I think we're still in for a great fight because Pantoja, I think, is still improving on the feet every time we see him. He's getting more and more comfortable in the striking. I do think Moreno probably has an edge there. It seems like his boxing has advanced to a point where you would think he's at least a little bit ahead of Pantoja in a pure striking match. But, man, as Omar said, Pantoja is walking through people right now. I mean, just devouring dudes. The way that he beat Alex Perez and Brandon Royval, it's like they weren't even in there, especially Perez. And that Manel Kape fight, again, I'm going back to Pantoja's striking improving. They struck the whole fight. He didn't beat Manel Kape by grappling. He beat Manel Kape in a striking match, which is pretty fucking impressive. So, I don't know. I've been going back and forth the whole time. I feel like I don't even want to pick this. I want to watch the embeddeds and see what kind of feeling I get as I watch the embeddeds. I do trust Moreno more cardio-wise, I think, as the fight goes on. But on the flip side of that, I feel like Pantoja is the guy who's more likely to find a finish, especially by choke. He's so good at taking the back and taking it when the tiniest little opportunity presents itself. And I know Moreno's finished 2 dudes in a row, but for some reason I don't see him finishing Pantoja with strikes. Pantoja's a pretty durable guy. So I'm torn. It's one of those fights where I feel like you pick it and then the other guy wins and you're going to be like, how the fuck did I not pick that guy? He's so good. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Pantoja, man. I just think it's his time, and I don't think that Brandon Moreno is an unbeatable type of champion. So I'm going to say Pantoja can hang enough on the feet, find some success, create some scramble opportunities, and take the back in one of them. If it makes the cards, I think it's probably Moreno, but I'll say Pantoja finds the back and finds a choke. Round 3 rear naked choke.
Dude, come on, man. Do it for Mexico.
You know what's crazy about this whole thing, though, is Brandon Moreno has not been finished in his professional career.
Wow,
right?
and I expect him to get finished.
No submissions, no knockouts. Only decisions has he been beaten in his professional career.
Well, I was going to say, Pantoja did choke him out on tough, though.
But isn't that crazy though, right? Like the only choke that he has even on his fucking resume is from Pantoja, but it doesn't even affect the actual like professional score for his record.
Oh my God, dude.
What happened?
Trayshawn Gore's out.
Oh, come on.
I literally just got the fucking...
Boo.
Fuck, man. Are we going to get a replacement for Nickel?
It says they're actively looking for a replacement. They want to keep him on the card.
Hell yeah, man.
God.
That sucks.
Gore was like, nah, I'm not doing this. Fuck this.
He saw the odds. He was like, plus 750. Fuck that.
Oh, that's balls.
Did it say he's injured? Did it say what he injured?
It doesn't say. It just says he's out.
He's
and
just
they're
out.
actively looking for a replacement because they want to keep Nickel on the card.
That sucks.
Dude.
Oh, my God.
Okay, let's do this main event time, and then let's get out of here because I got to go enjoy some Independence Day festivities with my family.
I think you're saying
we all
go
do.
enjoy some independence. I would have liked
Independence. I'm going to go launch $500 worth of fireworks off my back deck.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah, baby. Fucking
Actually,
America. Let's
No,
go.
not me. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that.
You should totally do that.
Main event. I can't believe this fucking card is so stacked.
Falling apart by the second.
Yeah, right. Alexander the Great Volkanovski taking on Yair El Bandera Rodriguez. Unifying the belts. The champ versus the interim champ. Volkanovski out of Windang. I didn't know that was where he's from. Windang, New South Wales, Australia. 34 years old. Is 25-2 as a pro with 12 knockouts and 3 subs on his record. Coming off of a loss against Islam Makhachev when he tried to move up and become a champ back in February. Was a great fight, though. He did not lose any stock, in my opinion, in that loss to Makhachev. No. Challenging for the lightweight belt.
Might gain stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah. Before that, he's just been on an absolute tear. I don't have time to count the consecutive fight win streak that he was on, if you guys know off the top of your heads. That being said, he is still the reigning featherweight champ in the UFC. He'll be standing across from the fantastic kickboxer out of Mexico, Yair Rodriguez, 30 years old, 15-3 with 1 no contest, coming off back-to-back wins against Brian Ortega and Josh Emmett. The Josh Emmett fight was for the interim belt in the featherweight division, in which he finished Josh Emmett in the second round by triangle choke. So Yair using those long limbs now to hunt for submissions on the ground. Very exciting stuff. Very intriguing matchup. Mark, why don't you start us off? Give us the odds, your opinions, and ultimately your pick for this great featherweight title fight between Volkanovski and Rodriguez.
There's some surprisingly wide odds on this card, and this one is not... I mean, I guess not surprising because Volk is unreal, but he is minus 400. Yair Rodriguez is plus 300.
I don't hate that, to be honest.
Yeah. All right. It's going to be a 5-inch height advantage for Yair Rodriguez, so pretty big. Reach actually favors Volk by half an inch, being a long motherfucker that he is.
Wow.
But certainly not the leg reach. So the legs of Yair are going to be hugely in play, as they always are, but maybe even more so here with that extra height that Yair will carry in this matchup. Yair's unreal. He truly is. He looks super dialed in at this stage of his career. He absolutely feels like a guy who is special enough to be a champion. I do think it's absolutely the right time for him to be running into Volk. I think this is the best Yair there has ever been, and that prior Yairs would have had less of a chance than this one does. But the issue is he's got to fight Volk. He's in a division where the champion is Alexander Volkanovski, and I don't know how you pick against Volkanovski right now. He hammers it home how elite he is more and more every single time we watch him. Even in that loss to Islam, as we said, I think his stock rose. I do think it could be hairy early, like in the first 10 minutes of this fight, as Volk has to adapt to the crazy timing and whirlwind blender striking that is Yair Rodriguez. I do think he may have to go through some shit. I could see it being really competitive, and maybe he even gets caught. But even if he does get caught bad, is Yair going to get him out of there? I don't know, man. Volk's chin is so good, and he recovers so fast historically. I just think even if Yair does land something clean in those first 1 or 2 rounds, that I kind of see Volk scrambling through a couple hairy moments and then like clinching up or separating and kind of like giving a little oh fuck smirk, like I'm fine, but that was not what I was going for there. You know, I don't know if I see Yair truly putting him out. And beyond that, I think Volk gets right back to work. And I do think as this goes on and he gets Yair's timing down a bit more, I think it starts to swing more toward Volk as the fight goes on. The cardio, I think, is in his favor. The fight IQ, I think, is in his favor. Just his mentality. He's just this overwhelming force that I think you can only hold back for so long. So I think it starts to swing his way. I think he'll be ripping the leg a lot. I think he'll be landing in the boxing. Yair can be outboxed. We've seen that before. I think Volk can mix in some grappling just to try to tire Yair, to try to prevent him from getting too comfortable on the feet and make him have to think about that the takedown could be coming at any moment. And I think Volk takes over the fight the later it goes. Could be a late finish. Could be decision. I'm going to say Yair can make it the whole 25, but I really think Volk wins all of the last 3 rounds of this fight and maybe even one of the first 2. So I'll say it's like 48-47, maybe even 49-46. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to say 49-46 Volk, UD.
I will go next. I'm in the same camp as you, man. As electric as Yair can be and has been lately, and as much of a very intriguing stylistic matchup he presents for Volkanovski with his length, with his kicks, with his kickboxing. He's really more of a Taekwondo guy, right? Taekwondo is Yair?
Yeah. I mean, I would say so, just based off of the way he uses his legs, yeah.
It's not Muay Thai. It's, yeah.
No.
Yeah. That being said, how do you pick against Volkanovski at this point, at this stage of his career, of his title run? The guy fights flawlessly. He's perfect in there at featherweight. In spite of his attribute disadvantages with his short stature, it doesn't matter. He has very good power for 145. He has incredible technique, safety. He manages his distance so well. He's great on the ground. He's getting his hand raised. I'll say Volk 5th round TKO against Rodriguez. Omar. Is it Viva Mexico?
With his boy.
No, guys.
Oh.
I alluded to this last week, I think, or even maybe the week before, but I love Yair. I will always love Yair. It's just this is a bad matchup for him. Like, even if we take aside the fact that Alexander Volkanovski is currently probably one of the greatest active fighters that there is, the skill sets that Volkanovski presents on paper just seem like real shit shows for Yair. And once you add the fact that Volkanovski is that fucking good, it gets even worse, right? I just think Volkanovski has a lot of power. The way that he enters, I think, as textbook as it seems, is something that people don't really do very well in the UFC or in MMA in general. Volkanovski is really good at just getting under those punches, just getting over your punches, being able to counter with overhands just over the shoulder. He's very, very good, and with the height disadvantage, I think he's been able to come up with a style that works well for his body type. And I think it fucks with a lot of people because it's a very rare thing to find in training partners unless you're going with somebody who's not your size. Volkanovski is this weird, like, stocky golem hybrid thing where he fights like a gigantic human being, but he's really not. Yair is going to be the type of fighter, I think, that's going to want to play distance, and I think Volkanovski's tenacity to push forward and close that distance is going to work more in his favor. I think if we go down to the ground, I think we've seen that Volkanovski, while he can get into trouble on the ground, it's going to be very difficult for him to be submitted and to be, I think, overrun on the ground. Even looking at Makhachev and what he was able to do and what he was able to not do in that fight, I think speaks volumes as to how this fight's going to go on the ground. I can't see anywhere that Yair is going to take significant edge over Volkanovski. Not in the striking, not in the ground, not in the submission game, not in the clinch. I don't see it, man. And like I said, I love Yair. I want to see it. I want to be like fucking Viva Mexico for the next two, for Yazmin, for like for everything. But just realistically, man, I don't think this is the one for him, and it breaks my fucking heart because I love Yair as champion, and I've always wanted to see it, and I was happy when it happened.
Yep.
But I just think this is a really, really tall order, and I don't think he's going to get it done, man, as much as I would love to see it. I think Volkanovski is going to win the unanimous decision. I don't think he finishes Yair, but I do think he wins at least 4 out of the 5 rounds.
Okay. We all took Volk. I took him with the late finish. You guys both went UD. I cannot wait. This is going to be definitely a fight. Both co-main and main are both going to be fights where my palms are going to be very sweaty.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I just realized I went against both Mexicans. Mexico is not going to be pleased with my picks here.
It's okay. We get most of our viewers from Asia and the Middle East.
Yeah.
Hey, you never know. It depends on who's fighting. Maybe we'll get a Mexico viewing this week.
Maybe we will.
That'd be nice.
Let's end with a little bit. I don't have any trivia, but I have some fun 4th of July facts.
All right.
I'll just rattle them off. The estimated population of the United States on July 4th, 1776, around 2.5 million citizens.
That's New York City.
That's a quarter of New York City now.
Yeah.
Fireworks were the first time fireworks were ever used to celebrate the 4th of July was the very next year, 1777 in Philadelphia. During World War II, the Declaration of Independence, the actual document, was stored in Fort Knox. Approximately 150 million hot dogs are consumed by Americans every 4th of July holiday. 150 million hot dogs.
That's fucking disgusting.
Tying it into MMA a little bit, the only UFC fighter that I can find who was born on the 4th of July is Dana Batgarel.
Okay.
So random. Not an American, but still.
But he's celebrating today.
He is.
He is.
He's like, happy birthday, America, but me too. The UFC has never held an event on the 4th of July. There have been events held on July 3rd and on July 5th, but for some reason, even though I'm sure the 4th of July has fallen on a Saturday some years, the UFC has never booked an event on the 4th of July. Let's see. 3 presidents have died on the 4th of July. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson both died on the same 4th of July in 1826. And a few years later, Monroe died on the 4th of July. Calvin Coolidge was the first and still only U.S. president to be born on the 4th of July in 1872. And let's see. I'll end with 2 of my favorites. John Adams, one of the 3 guys who died on the 4th of July, he thought that Independence Day should have been celebrated on July 2nd because, this is very interesting, he had a point, given that the Continental Congress did actually declare its freedom from Great Britain on July 2nd. However, an official document explaining this move was put out to the public 2 days later on July 4th. And July 4th is now celebrated as Independence Day, even though the government, or like what was becoming the government, actually declared independence on July 2nd. And the last one, Americans spend over $1 billion every year on fucking fireworks.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
You guys have any trivia?
I don't have any trivia.
No, I think you set the bar right there for that shit. That was a new one right there. That was good.
I could have made a couple of those into trivia, but then I was like, what's the point? They would have been so random.
I would not have known any of that shit.
Would you guys have guessed that Dana Batgarel was the only UFC fighter born on July 4th?
Wouldn't have got that one, no.
Nope.
All right, folks, let's get out of here. It is noon, our time, and enjoy the 4th. If you're celebrating the 4th, and enjoy this amazing, amazing pay-per-view card. We have this coming up this Saturday. So
let's hope no one else falls off the card.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, don't do that. You just jinxed the whole fucking thing.
Oh, dude. Trayshawn Gore, he's out. I'm reading now he's out because he has a fireworks accident at his house. He blew his thumb off.
There's no way that's fucking real.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, all right. You imagine? No, it does say wrist injury actually.
Imagine.
Which is why when you said something about the firework, I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Because it wasn't the hand wrist area, so you had me for a minute.
All right, boys, let's get out of here.
Let's do it
and go enjoy your holiday.
All right. Happy 4th, everyone.
Happy 4th.
Happy birthday,
Peace.
America. Peace.
Peace.